Now, what was the most difficult part of writing the book? Because you understand storytelling and you understand build and rise and how to, get it over. But what was the most difficult thing? Because essentially it's your life story. So like, how much do you want to share? How open do you get? Like, was there difficulty in opening up about your past, your childhood, or like whatever?
No, I don't go. I don't go. Like, okay. I have nothing to hide or anything. The most, I guess, as far as like what to put in and what not, in jam, it's like kind of like a wrestling match too, or like a promo. That's why WWE promos suck, because they jam 5,000 words in there that aren't necessary. Say what you want to say, mean what you want to say, get your point across. I'm gonna beat your ass on Saturday night because I don't like you. Boom, done. Like, we don't need all these. What is this? 4 pages of right? So. And sometimes at a match, it's like, okay, we planned out all these spots, but like, really, what is the story? What are we trying to get? You're the good guy, I'm the bad guy. You're big, you're small, you're tall, you're short, whatever the contrast of styles or the story we're telling. Why do we have all this? Sometimes you just look at it and go, you know what? We don't need all that extra. Let's just, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Like, so there's some stuff where I probably wasted like a month on a bunch of that I just went like, I don't need this. Like, this is just, I don't even know why I'm putting this in here. Like, I think I was putting it in for like other people, and I'm like, it just doesn't fit it up the flow, and just, I don't know. I canned it all. Wasted a month of work. Because I was just like, it doesn't serve the purpose of the book. Like, because, I almost looked at it like an album. Like, you have an opening track, and you go up and you go down, and you have like a ballad, and then you come back up or whatever, and you have a close. So once I started to get kind of get a feel for what I want it to be, it was real easy to just can stuff. Not because, but there was nothing I was hiding or leaving. If I'm leaving it out, because it just doesn't fit. So like crafting that like perfectly balanced story was. I wouldn't say that was the hardest part, and that was your question, but the hardest part is just the focus, because it takes an incredible amount of focus to write a book. I mean, I knew it was going to take a lot of hours. I knew it was going to be a lot of hours, a lot of sitting and typing and writing and thinking. I didn't realize like how mentally and emotionally draining it was going to be. Like 2 hours of like really deep writing, you feel like you just ran a marathon. You're like physically spent, especially like. For me to tell the right story, like I got to go back to that place. I got to like put myself mentally and emotionally where I was, what was going on, what was I doing, what music was I listening to, what was around me, what were the sights and smells and sounds, and that's like really draining to go to these places, especially when they're not really pleasant places you don't want to go. So yeah, it was like I'm glad it's over. It was tough, and like it's such a draining and demands so much of your focus and attention, but so does a pregnant wife. So that was horrible timing that those two things intersected, because I'm like trying to focus on this, but I'm also I'm worried about her. So I'm like, there was just a lot of. I'm glad it's over. Whew. I'm like ready to just like. I'm not even worried about this kid, because let's just have the kid. That'll be easy. I'll just change diapers. Like, I'm so glad there's nothing more to write. Or so hopefully it's good. Maybe it'll suck. I don't know. Like, it doesn't matter, because I like it. I think I can confidently say that I like it.
So that's all that matters. Then
literally, that's all I care about.
That's it.
If one person really likes it, then I'm happy. If 1,000 people.
Hey, we here at the Red Carpet Rain and Tots Rain Scandal, aka KDH. We're here to talk about Jon Moxley audiobook. We're here to talk about the book that he has here, written by Jon Moxley, what I learned from Jon Moxley's audiobook. But we also talking about on Jon Moxley's book as well. We are talking about his book that he wrote, Get Ready for the Wildest Ride with MOX Audiobook. We're talking about vivid trip through the mind of professional wrestler Jon Moxley. You guys know him as Dean Ambrose back in WWE. You guys also know him now as Jon Moxley, former WWE champion, current AEW World Champion. He was part of Shield back in NXT with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. Then later on, he left WWE to go to AEW, where he became a current AEW World Champion, a record time, 4-time AEW World Champion, also in the stable Blackpool Combat Club. So this is going to be a very interesting. You guys get the likes of this. We come into the ring and locker room. There could be some dirty laundry on this one. With that being said, guys, it's going to be very interesting. Miguel Garcia, hello. Bruleon Skillbread, salute to you guys. Thanks for coming out. This is part 1 of audiobook. There will be another part later on, but for right now, we will get through part 1. Enough of what I have to say. You guys enjoyed. Let's listen to Jon Moxley, formerly known as Dean Ambrose. Let's listen to what he has to say on this audiobook.
Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents MOX by Jon Moxley. Narrated by Jon Moxley. Prologue by MOX. I've never really considered my own identity. Sure, I've occupied the vessels of characters and certain narratives over the years, and maybe some of these narratives or the things that happen within these storylines were informed or inspired by my real life. In those cases, I was tapping into elements of my own identity as if this were all real. But it's also all fake. Point of clarification, as a wrestler, I'm allowed to say fake, but you're not. Don't make me stab you. Did that make any sense to you? Have I lost you already? Professional wrestlers are such a strangely specific type of athlete, performer, artist, entertainer. We're impossible to categorize. I've heard people try. Even wrestlers themselves. Don't. Just don't. There's no specific word or term. It's just wrestling. And you'd only be shortchanging the thing we love if you tried to define it any more than that. Wrestling can be anything. It's everything. It's world-class athletes. It's Broadway, Shakespeare, summer blockbusters, best-selling novels, soap operas, high art. It's nobodies from nowhere finding a way to say to the world, fuck you. It's entertainment. It's movies. It's music. It's everything. If you don't like wrestling already, you're probably not listening to this book. But just in case you're a civilian not initiated into our world, welcome. You're gonna love it. There's something for everybody. I never put much thought into my actual identity until I started writing this book. For many years, I simply didn't exist. Then I became a pro wrestler, and now I'm writing this and trying to figure out, who the fuck do we say wrote it? What is my identity? Okay, we can say it's a book by a pro wrestler. At least that we know for certain. The rest, I've come to find as I go back and think about how I got here, about to have a little girl, who we're calling Nora, and who I'm going to be teaching to choke motherfuckers from an early age. That I'm a bunch of other things too. Athlete, entertainer, storyteller, yes, but also socially challenged, borderline alcoholic, mildly sadomasochistic, head case, poor kid, juvenile delinquent brother, son, friend. I'm also a pretty damn good husband and a supernaturally potent sexual creature. Above all, I hope to be a good father, which I know in my heart I will be. I have no fear of that. So who do we say wrote the book? Just say Mox, because that can mean everything. It's all that shit and everything else I've forgotten, and even shit that hasn't happened yet. I make no apologies. I don't profess to have any answers about anything. That being said, I've seen some shit and been some places and made some observations along the way. I want this book to be fun to listen to, and I sincerely hope that no one takes it too seriously, but maybe somebody can learn something. I know fuck all about shit, but somehow I came out on the other side of the last 35 years having achieved everything I ever wanted with the woman of my dreams. I'm blessed to do what I love for a living, and I like to think that I'm pretty good at it. Maybe I just got lucky. Maybe this book just serves as a guide of what not to do. For instance, don't smoke crack. I'll describe it for you now, just so curiosity doesn't get the better of you. It's like doing a whippet and eating wasabi at the same time. Still, if you really just love smoking crack and that's your thing, I won't stop you. In any case, just like any night I come back from the ring, in writing this book, I hope I've created something people enjoy.
Just like any night, I lay my soul bare, sweating and bleeding with all my effort and whatever physical ability I have left, just to tell a story or two. With this book, I share my experience with you. Joke Claudio told me. I had a dream I swam in an ocean of orange soda, but it was just a fantasy. Backup plans. I don't believe in backup plans. Wrestling is one of those pursuits where you'll hear you should have a backup plan. Go to school, get your degree. There's no guarantee of success, and even then, it's often fleeting. Countless wrestlers who've had success have blown their money, spending it fast as if it will last forever, ending up with nothing when it's over. This business, like many, especially in the entertainment field, can be cruel. Jim Ross came down to FCW one time and gave the talent a good talk about setting yourself up for the future. Pay your taxes, save your money, be a good citizen. Nothing good happens after midnight. It's all sound advice, of course. He stressed preparing for life after your career in the ring is over. Even if you are one of the lucky ones, your physical window as an athlete is finite. Having a degree, a fallback plan, a backup plan is a good idea. In theory, yes, I can't disagree with that logic. I took a lot of JR's advice to heart as it made a lot of sense, especially about keeping your financial house in order. There was no guarantee I would ever make it to the main roster in WWE, and if I did, who knows how long it would last. I saved my money. I always make sure my taxes are paid. But the part about having a backup plan, I couldn't help but think as I listened that if I'd had a backup plan, I probably wouldn't have made it even this far. A backup plan to me is planning to fail. And education is always a good thing, and I did later get my high school diploma online, which was so easy to do it made me wonder what the point even was. Having more than one skill set, varied interests, passions, and ways to earn income, diversifying yourself, these are all great things. But I think if you really want something, whatever that is, you have to go after it with 100% of yourself. If you're going to go for it, go for it. Great things aren't achieved with a safety net in place. Safety nets, backup plans. These are distractions, excuses to give up early. A backup plan may be put in place for your benefit, but what it really serves as is a way out. If you want something bad enough, if you believe in yourself, failure can't be an option. The very concept that you may not succeed simply can't exist. A backup plan may alleviate fear of failure, but you need that fear. When I set out on this journey, I was terrified to fail. Thus, it simply wasn't an option. So when it was time to learn arm drag or some such thing in wrestling school, you better fucking believe I was paying attention. This was not a game. This was life. I'd now dedicated my existence to this pursuit. It was all or nothing. Become a great professional wrestler, succeed, whatever that nebulous concept meant, or nothing. There was no other job, no other career, no money, no other anything. There was nothing on the other side but a meaningless existence in Picadilly, sucking up oxygen, scraping out a living. That was about as acceptable as death, and terrified me to no end. It drove me to train the extra hours, drive the thousands of extra miles, and work every rinky-dink independent show in the Western Hemisphere. That fear drove me to overcome obstacles, setbacks, and failures. It drove me to soldier on in the face of adversity and overwhelming odds, well past the point of reason, to a point others call delusion or obsession. If people call you delusional for believing you can achieve your dreams, fuck them. If they call you obsessed, well, yeah, you have to be obsessed. Obsessed is a word the lazy use to describe the dedicated. I couldn't stomach the thought of not succeeding. It caused me physical revulsion. During a dark period where I couldn't get booked anywhere, I found myself at 22 with no education, job skills, or money, and nothing to show for my years of hard work thus far. Not making it started to look like a real possibility. The failure had taken my back, it had its hooks in, and was looking for the choke. I just refused to die. I moved forward because there was no choice but to move forward. I don't believe in backup plans. I call them 10th hour plans. You can't win in the 11th hour if you quit in the 10th hour. We're the good guys. This is a crazy-ass ride I've been on for 16 years. But recently, now, finally, the whole world makes sense to me. How did I get here? How have I been AEW World Champion for so long? The answer is my dad. 6'3", 250-pound brick shithouse would box your ears if you got out of line. Scary. One day he's in town. He picks me up from the police station, but he doesn't hit me. He looks at me and he says something I'll never forget. He says, "Son, we're the good guys. No matter what happens, no matter what's going on around you, just remember, we're the good guys." They tried to lie, cheat, and steal this championship away from me. I've been jumped, beat up. I've fought monsters, technicians, my own friends, but I always know what to do. I always have. We're the good guys. And now the whole world is bearing down on me. My body feels like hell. I can't even get out of bed in the morning. I have a pregnant wife at home. I'm holding 2 titles on 2 different continents. I have challengers coming at me from every which way. What do? I know what to do. We're the good guys. So tonight, I'm going to walk to the ring. I'm going to sign that contract without any hesitation. I'm going to look into Kenny Omega's eye. I'm going to shake his hand and let him know in no uncertain terms, I am the best wrestler in the world. I am the AEW World Champion. I am my dad's son. I am Jon goddamn Moxley, and that is never gonna change. That story, taken from an interview I did on an episode of AEW Dynamite, is 99.9% true. I took the creative liberty to make my dad 6'3", 250 pounds in order to enhance the idea of his physically intimidating presence, when in reality he's 5'9". But he was still every bit the brick shithouse in his prime. My dad, Danny Burrowgood, had meaty hands and a crushing grip that appeared superhuman to me as a child. Fortified by baling hay in the humid summers of rural Claremont County in southern Ohio. Built like a human fire hydrant, my dad was an all-conference football player for Claremont Northeastern High School. At center, sturdy, fortified, dependable, in command, in control of the football. Nothing happens until I snap this ball. When I do, I will gracefully and assuredly pass it between my legs to my teammate, the quarterback who gets all the attention, praise, and chicks, and then, and only then, the play will commence. After that, some violent shit might go down. I'll do what I gotta do to make sure our prom king quarterback gets to do his thing. And I'll get down and dirty to block who I need to and clear a path for the star running back who gets his photos in the paper. Cool, calm, composed, trustworthy, the bedrock, the center. That's my dad. We're the good guys is my moral compass, the words that guide me to determine which path I take. When we sat in that car and my dad said the words that would be forever etched into my brain, he wasn't trying to philosophize, wax poetic, or tell me some groundbreaking new idea I'd never heard before. It was simple. Common sense, really. I was into some bad shit, hanging around other kids my age doing stupid things, but that wasn't who I was. He knew it. He knew I knew it. The message of We're the Good Guys is simple. If your life was a movie, are you doing the things the bad guys in the movie are doing, or the things the good guys are doing? In film, it's usually easy to tell the difference. You know who the protagonist is, you know who the antagonist is. You don't have to be told. No, I'm not saying after this exact moment I never did anything stupid again. I went on to commit many stupid, regrettable, and embarrassing offenses, and probably will go on to commit more in the future. But as I get older, more experienced, collect more scars, and become more grateful to God and the universe for my abundance of good fortune, I always come back to this simple philosophy. We're the good guys. There are exceptions to every rule. Robin Hood stole from the rich to give to the poor. Jack Reacher, one of my favorite literary characters and often an inspiration for my character in AEW, kills motherfuckers at a breakneck pace in pretty unforgiving fashion, but it's always because it's the right thing to do. Jack Reacher has no patience for bad guys doing bad guy shit. He'll just shoot you. But his moral compass is always irrefutably on point. For long periods of time when I was young, my dad wasn't around. My mom, Karen, and he divorced when I was little. Even when they were married, it didn't feel like they were together. Probably because I never saw them at the same time. Mostly, I just remember my mom, soaked in sweat and tears, emerging from her room after a long shouting match with my dad over the phone. She told my sister Lauren and me that they were getting a divorce. All they did was fight. My reaction as a little tyke who could see the obvious was something like, yeah, no shit. I have the two greatest parents anyone could ask for, and they sacrificed to the utmost for us. But let's face it, they should have never been together. The thought of them as a couple today is comical to me. But they got married young and pregnant young. My dad was 19, his prefrontal lobe not even developed, and he had a wife and 2 babies. Dad did what he needed to do. He worked 2 jobs, moonlighting as a waiter at a Frisch's restaurant and in the shop at Cadillac Plastic in Cincinnati by day. He would eventually work his way from the shop into a sales position in an office, where he would bring me on the weekends when the place was empty and he was working overtime. I would vacuum the floors, throw out the trash, and Windex all the glass for a cool $2 payday. He taught me how to melt a square sheet of plastic in 2 spots, bend them, clamp them into place, and make a picture frame. Eventually, he did such a good job in his new position, he was asked to move to Dallas and take a higher-paying position at another branch. My mom wouldn't go. Refused to budge. My dad knew that to best provide for his family and our future, he had to take this job. He knew he'd be lonely in a new city away from his young kids. He knew we wouldn't understand. I wouldn't understand until I was in my 20s. He knew he wouldn't get the credit he deserved. He did what he had to do. He walked up to the line, snapped the ball, and did the dirty work. The center. Today, my dad is the branch manager of Laird Plastic in Dayton, Ohio. Started from the bottom. He beat lymphoma. When he got the diagnosis, he reacted as if he'd had a hangnail. No cell. During the pandemic, he's been working 60-hour weeks as they're pumping out plastic protective equipment of all sorts to meet unimaginable demand. No problem. Walk to the line, snap the ball, do what needs getting done. We're the good guys. The G1. I love wrestling in Japan. I love the fans, the culture. I love the style, the physicality. I love the 7-Eleven, which is what I was most excited to show my wife when I brought her to Tokyo with me for Wrestle Kingdom 13 at the Tokyo Dome. In Japanese pro wrestling, fighting spirit is revered above all else. Never say die. This idea, this attitude, is nowhere more present than in the young lions from the dojo of New Japan Pro Wrestling. I love to watch them work. Trainees at the NJPW dojo, the young lions, go through the most intense and disciplined training camp that exists today. The workouts are intense. Endless Hindu squats, push-ups, intense wrestling drills, bending their spines backwards over a tire to develop the perfect bridge to deliver a beautiful suplex. But the program is more than just the workouts. It's a way of life. It's designed to transform you fully, completely, into something greater. The young lions foster the fighting spirit. They demonstrate discipline daily, always at the bus early to carry and stow the bags of established veterans. They kneel by the ring during matches, studying the moves of their elders intently. They dutifully dart into the ring after a 3 count to place ice bags on the head of those exhausted and possibly concussed elders. They take back bumps. Fuck! Do they take back bumps? You will never see a more intense, crisp back bump than one performed by a young lion during a pre-show training session. When young lions get a chance to compete, usually against each other, is always intense. They're fighting for their spot in the pecking order, fighting to prove themselves to their teachers, to veterans, to the fans, and to each other. I can relate. February 2004, I was 18, and it was finally time for me to do more than sell sodas and sweep the floors at the HWA main event pro wrestling camp. I was ready to fucking go. I never missed a 2-hour, 3-day-a-week training session for 2 years. I'd put in endless extra hours in the ring, running, lifting weights, watching tape, anything extra I could do. This was my one shot at doing something in life, and I was dedicating my entire existence, fully and completely, to the pursuit of professional wrestling. I threw every bit of myself into any opportunity to be in the ring, eager for the approval of my teachers, reckless abandon. My favorite wrestling coach when I was a kid once told me, "Don't pace yourself. Just go until you fall over. We'll pick you up." That stuck with me. Maybe too much. It was a pure time. I had little experience, skill, or knowledge, but I was full of piss, vinegar, M-Dog 2020 and confidence. Fuck you and fuck anybody who doesn't think I'm going to be a great professional wrestler. I'll show you. Watch me. Creating negativity just to feed off it. The only fuel I'd ever known. 15 years later, that same 18-year-old kid walked up the steps outside legendary Korakuen Hall in Tokyo. A young lion once again. As I get to the top floor following NJPW personnel and my second young lion Shota Umino down the hallway, I have the feeling I'm going to march to the bus stop to fight some Picadilly bully. The feeling somebody mistreated my sister and I'm coming to beat the fuck out of them. The feeling somebody is trying to literally deny my right to exist as a professional wrestler. The fuel, the only fuel I'd ever known, burns intensely, heating up with every stride down these hollowed halls. I repeat to myself, this is the night. Right fucking now is the moment. I will shut everybody the fuck up. Anger building to a boiling point with every step until I reach the door and hear the raw guitar chords of my entrance music and explode into the arena to the gasps of the fans in Korakuen. It's 100 degrees, easy. The humidity thick. Kevin Kelly, a veteran commentator, notes that he is scared. It's night 3 of B-Block competition in the 29th annual G1 Climax tournament. The most prestigious, the toughest, most grueling tournament in the sport. Tomohiro Ishii, my opponent, hasn't yet entered the ring as I make my way down the stairs through the fans and palpable tension to the ring. Better get the fuck out of the way. Ishii, the Stone Pitbull, is a hero, a legend, the definition of fighting spirit. What the fans here in this historic building know is that Ishii will give no quarter. He will go out on his shield. A samurai, he's happy to die in the ring tonight with honor. What they don't know is that I'm about to open my palm, rear back, and bitch slap the entire wrestling world in the mouth. This is my first main event in NJPW, and what I know, what I'm certain of, is that every person in this building and watching all over the world wants me to fail. I can hear their jokes and insults. You don't belong here. You can't cut it in the G1. You'll never make it as a pro wrestler. What a stupid dream. You'll never get a contract. You'll never make it in WWE. Go ahead, leave WWE, and we'll all watch you fall flat on your ass. Fuck you. Tonight, I won't back down an inch. I will take what I want by any means necessary, and the only way to deny me is to kill me. Ishii will give no quarter. Ishii enters the arena with his ever-present scowl, comes through the ropes with one step, and is in my face before he completes a second. I push my forehead into Ishii's. I will not give an inch. No quarter. This is the moment. The bell rings. How did we get here? February 2019. It's a blustery, snowy day. I'm at the Courtyard Inn at the Winnipeg Airport in Manitoba, Canada. I have a WWE house show at the Bell MTS place. Rumors have swirled for the last month that I'm not re-signing with Vince when my contract expires in April. I get a text from Rocky Romero, liaison with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Not sure what your plans are after April, but would love to get you over to New Japan. I thanked him for reaching out and replied, "I'm extremely interested." We agreed to talk at a later date. At that point, nobody knew anything about my post-WWE plans. I wasn't sure myself, but the truth be told, my confidence was low. I didn't feel like myself. A disastrous heel run in late 2018 had eroded any inkling in my mind that I would re-sign. I knew I was out when the clock struck midnight on April 29th, but beyond that, it was all a bit fuzzy. My first thought was that my next move would be to take myself off Broadway, so to speak. A term I learned from Dusty Rhodes. Go wrestle off the grid. Maybe you wrestle under a mask. Just find a way to enjoy wrestling again. Find a new style, a new concept, a new look. Maybe a new name? I wasn't sure. One thing I knew was that I wanted to go to Japan. I loved wrestling in Japan. In WWE, we do a double shot at Sumo Hall in Tokyo every summer. I look forward to those shows more than any show all year. More than the pay-per-views, more than WrestleMania, those shows were fun. I loved the atmosphere, the respect of the crowd, the engagement. In Japan, you can just wrestle. At Sumo Hall on those shows, I had a distinct feeling. I connected with the crowd in a particular way. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But I knew in the back of my mind I could come back and work there one day. I quietly folded that up and put it in the back of my mind to save for a rainy day. It was pouring now. It became a goal of mine to have at least one solid run in a legit Japanese company. Which company? I didn't know. There are many different promotions in Japan, big and small. Many have distinct products and specialize in one style of wrestling. Where would I fit in? There are shoot-style promotions, deathmatch promotions. I wondered if I could do a big deathmatch at Sumo Hall. Promotions that specialize in comedy. Some that specialize in featuring high-flying aerial artists. But there is only one king today. New Japan Pro Wrestling. Of course, New Japan was the top choice for a run in Japan, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I was a little scared. I knew New Japan was home to the best wrestlers in the world. The highest standard of in-ring excellence. I remembered being enamored with Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Minoru Suzuki while I was in FCW. I knew there were guys there I was familiar with and had worked with. I reasoned that if they could do it, well, I could do it. But my confidence was lacking. Still, New Japan, the top choice, had now called me. I wasn't going to say no. Still, I couldn't picture myself in New Japan. I was inexperienced in the nuances of the style, and I didn't know if I could keep up with these guys. But I still figured, hey, there's got to be a place for me there somewhere. And this is the next move, one solid little run. No pressure. Fast forward. I'm standing in my garage, gym, fortress of solitude, talking to Rocky. Basically, it's whatever you want. If you want to come over for a couple big shows, cool. You want to do a tour, cool. We'd love to have you in the G1, that'd be sick. Pause. Full stop. The G1? I hadn't even considered it. Never expected they'd ask me. The G1 Climax tournament, aka the G1, is the most prestigious tournament in the sport, where the best wrestlers in the world go head-to-head in the most physically demanding high-level matches in the world. Best of the best. Filet mignon. The creme de la creme. That much I knew, but competing in a G1 was a foreign concept. I was intimidated. After my casual conversation with Rocky, I came back in the house and sat down on the couch next to my wife. About 10 seconds later, I said to her, "Shit! I have to do the G1. "What's the G1? She asked. "It's this thing. Shit! You see, I was completely comfortable in my world where the G1 didn't exist until a few minutes ago, but now I feel like I have to go or I'm a coward. It intimidated me, but I can't live in a world where I backed down from a challenge, where I was scared, where I took the easy road, where I had the chance to do something extraordinary and I took the safe option. There was no choice now. Rocky couldn't have put less pressure on me the way he mentioned it, but the way my brain works, he may as well have said to me, "You won't do the G1, you pussy." I just ain't gonna back down on any shit. That's just my natural reaction. I didn't know I had this fear until 3 minutes ago, but now I had to conquer it. I figured there would be a lot of people out there that would scoff at the idea of me wrestling in the G1, who would say I was just some over-my-head, washed-out WWE superstar that was going to get exposed as not the real deal. Fuck them, I figured. I wasn't doing this for them, I was doing this for me. I can't say for sure anyone wanted me to fail. Hell, in fact, most people all around the world were all super supportive and happy for me. I have some great fans and some great friends. But supportive don't make the bacon, babe. I needed fuel. The only fuel I've ever known. So I turned all the little snarky fuckers out there with their little opinions into just that. Yes, Dean Ambrose in the G1, that's rich counseling, yes. Sit and type on your little computer while I'm out in the world making history, bitch. Y'all about to get slapped. Y'all know who you were. And thanks. So the G1 was gonna happen. First things first, at the end of my WWE run, I wasn't quite in peak physical condition. Aches and pains, old injuries were piling up. I'd been on the road nonstop. I'd been doing mostly 6-man tags with the Shield and short TV matches toward the end, so I knew I wasn't ready to compete in the longer, fast-paced, more physically demanding matches that were waiting for me in the G1. It was time to get to work. On April 30th, I called my friend Gil Gardado, whom I met at Extreme Couture in 2015. Gil's a professional MMA fighter and a strength and conditioning specialist extraordinaire. He trains pro fighters to fight 25 minutes if necessary. I didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into. Grappling conditioning is different from striking. Sprinters are different than marathon runners. I didn't know what I needed, so I decided I needed it all. If I was trained to fight for 25 minutes, I figured I'd be trained for the G1. I wanted to make sure all of my energy systems were at full strength. Gil put me through a full MMA-style training camp for 9 weeks. Strength and conditioning, wrestling, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, 2-a-days, the works. It was a bitch. But I'll be damned if I wasn't in the best shape of my life. We also focused on rehab, lots of active stretching and mobility training to fix all the little things that got all twisted up and bent out of shape over the years. I did cryotherapy in between workouts, steam, sauna, massage, stretching, anything extra I could do. An old young lion. Tokyo, Ryogoku, Sumo Hall. Next order of business was my debut in New Japan. I was delighted to hear from Rocky that the booker Gato wanted to bring me in before the G1 to introduce me to the audience against my old friend from FCW, Juice Robinson. You up at Sumo Hall. I couldn't have asked for a better first opponent, someone I knew, someone who spoke English. Also, the NJPW United States title would be on the line, so I'd be sporting a new fancy championship belt. Not too bad. My AEW debut at Double or Nothing had already happened at this point, so some of the fears and anxieties I had about life outside WWE and the audience's willingness to accept me were gone. But this was my first time actually in the ring outside WWE since 2011, and this was Japan. Would the New Japan audience know or care who I am? I couldn't picture it. What would I do? How would I walk, talk, and wrestle? I had no idea. I knew one thing, however. The most important thing, the only important thing, was getting over with the New Japan faithful live in the building. It was weird being back in Sumo Hall, but working for a different company. I was brought to the building early, the first one there. I stood atop the stands where I would enter that night and looked out at the ring. The New Japan ring. I'd seen it so many times on tape. Now I've been transported into a different universe and I'm here. Not unlike the first time you're live on WWE Raw. You've seen it so many times on TV and now you're here. Somehow you've been transported inside the TV screen. I had reservations about how I'd be accepted by the locker room. Some big name dipshit WWE superstar coming into our house? How much are they paying him? He don't belong here, he's a joke. As the various New Japan wrestlers filed in, I introduced myself to everyone, and everyone was so cool. Zack Sabre Jr., who I haven't seen in 10 years since we last partied at a discotheque in Germany, arrived. We picked up right where we left off and shot the shit. I was calm, relaxed, remarkably calm considering the situation. There should have been a lot of pressure, but I felt none. I probably should have. If I stunk the joint out, they might change their minds about putting me in the G1. How embarrassing would that be? There'd been a lot of hoopla around my debuting tonight. It was a big match. If I didn't win the fans over right now, I'd be toast. I looked at the lineup, second to last, following Hiroshi Tanahashi, the star equivalent to a John Cena in the US. This is a hell of a situation. I can't fucking picture it. Who the hell am I gonna be in the ring anymore? I think maybe the Jon Moxley that escaped back into the world at Double or Nothing was in the final stage of battle with whatever the hell weak creature had been trying to maintain control of my consciousness. The real Jon Moxley would be set loose in the ring tonight again in an actual wrestling match, and once that bell rang, he would reclaim control of my body for good. Maybe it's because I'd already given up everything. There was nothing to lose anymore. I'd walked away from security, from being a WWE superstar, from I don't even know how many zeros on a check. I don't know what it was, but I was fine. It felt like the eye of the storm, eerily calm. When it was time, I emerged from the top of the stands at Sumo Hall. Entering through the crowd was Rocky's idea. I was initially resistant to it because in the spirit of reinvention, I didn't want to rely on any old WWE tricks. Entering through the crowd was the hallmark interest of the Shield. But Rocky was right. I immediately sent the tone as something different. Oh, was the sound that came from the fans as I made my way to the ring. I was feeling the crowd, feeling the music, feeling the energy, feeling myself. Juice and I immediately erupted into a furious exchange of blows. He met me at the ropes with an elbow that rang my bell. I clotheslined him over the top rope and the room was spinning. Great. Of all times. I hit the ropes to perform a suicide dive, praying I was riding in the right direction. As the match unfolded, it became an out-of-body experience. Chains and locks were popping off my body. I was aggressive. I was mean. I was loose. I was having fun. Oh yeah. This is what I used to do all the time. Jon Moxley is back. He's out of jail and he's beating the fuck out of Juice Robinson. The extent of the instructions we received from Gato was 15, 20 minutes. Blood, sweat, tables breaking. God, I love this shit. I would debut an elevated version of the dirty deeds we called the Death Rider and win the US title. I knew the match was pretty damn good. I felt many emotions, but mostly, I'm fucking back, baby. And that was just a dry run. That was my baseline. That's what I just do. It's only going to get better from here. When I returned to the dressing room, I received a standing ovation, common in New Japan, where the boys all watch the matches and all support each other. We all love this shit. I was stunned, elated, on cloud 9. Osaka Joe Hall. 3 days later, I grab the microphone. I bring a message from Cincinnati, Ohio, Jon Moxley, international purveyor of violence, gentleman, and all-around sick son of a bitch wants in the G1. Oh, that's right, baby. You got something to say, bitch? The guy who stood in his garage on the phone scared of the G1 doesn't exist anymore. I'm on the attack, the warpath. I returned to Las Vegas to train. The Death Rider became the name of my finish and sort of my moniker in Japan. It came by accident. In the mystery teaser videos that played before my arrival, produced by my boy Nick Mondo, the body double posing as me just happened to have a biker jacket from Goodwill that said Death Riders on the back. What it's actually in reference to is the guys who would ride motorcycles around the giant steel ball at carnivals. I think Ryan Gosling did that shit in a movie. You can Google it. Tokyo, Kyorakin Hall, G1, B Block, Night 3. Ishii and I have been beating the ever-loving hell out of each other for over 19 minutes at a breakneck pace. I've lost an incredible amount of body fluid in the summer humidity of the packed hall. My heart is beating hard. Kyorakin is rocking. We've given them violence both spectacular and revolting. Chairs and tables smashed, bodies flying through the air, skulls smashing into each other with a sickening thud. High drama, the audience can feel the contest in all its unapologetic violent glory building to a crescendo. I hear the timekeeper over the PA. 20 minutes gone by, 20 minutes pass. Shit, we're 20 minutes deep in this sumbitch. Self-assessment? I feel fine. I could go another 20. Crowd's on fire. Finally, after a blistering exchange, I dump Ishii on top of his head with the Death Rider. He grabs his neck in abject agony. The ref counts 3. In that moment, all the grueling hours and weeks of work I did to prepare for this tournament paid off. I felt like the king of the world. Unstoppable. All those people who said I couldn't do it, whether I created them in my head or not, I've proved to them there's no ceiling on what I can do in wrestling and in life. I didn't realize I'd have to address the crowd after the match, as it turns out is customary for the winner of the main event in New Japan. And boy, oh, was I tired. Hot, beat up. But when they motioned for me to take the mic, I grabbed it and delivered a dual message. From the heart to the whole world, whether you love me or hate me. For the fans in the building and all those who lifted me up, I express my sincere gratitude. For the doubters, for anyone who attempts to hold me down or stand in my way, well, the message has always been the same. Fuck you. Spin it up. Much has been said about the art of the album being lost. iTunes, singles, individual songs, TikTok, whatever the fuck that is, playlists, all that shit are the thing now. When I was a kid, when a band's new CD came out, it was about the whole album, from the first track to the last. You were meant to study the cover art, pull out the booklet inside containing the lyrics and maybe a fold-out poster, and read along for the duration of the recording. You were there to experience the journey, the whole album as one piece of work. Now, I love a good Spotify playlist, but there's something about the physical cassette or CD in your hands that just feels different, more personal. Renee is big into vinyl. She has a massive collection, which I appreciate. A lot of people are into collecting vinyl. They say it sounds better. Maybe. But I think it's more about owning and experiencing a piece of an artist's work in its complete form, how it was meant to be experienced. I totally get that. On the other hand, I'm something of a minimalist by nature. I throw shit out all the time. I'm not sentimental. They used to send me boxes of my WWE action figures all the time. And sure, it's nice to be able to give some away to family and friends, but at a certain point, it's like, just stop sending me fucking toys. I don't need them, and they're taking up space. I've taken several boxes to Goodwill. Some kid in Henderson may have wondered why there was such a surplus of Dean Ambrose figures at this particular location. One time I was so frustrated with these boxes in my garage, I took them up the street and threw them in the dumpster. My mother, my biggest fan, reacted as if I'd drowned a litter of baby kittens. I'm not what you would call tech savvy. I had a flip phone until WWE basically forced me to get a smartphone. Android all day. I don't fuck with no cloud. That's right, bitch. I'm a green texter. What? I haven't played a video game since Sega Genesis, and I wasn't good at them back then. Even writing this fucking book on my wife's MacBook is a challenge. This thing is constantly throwing curveballs at me. Writing on this MacBook, I feel like Will Smith in Independence Day piloting the alien craft. All that being said, I love the fact that I can have thousands of my favorite albums all stored on my device in one place. It's crazy to think about. The technology we have today makes it so you don't have to have stacks of CDs and shelves of records taking up space. In this case, I'm all for this fucking phone technology. It just makes sense. It's pragmatic. Still, I appreciate Renee's affinity for physical records, even though part of me is like, you realize we can hook your phone up to the Bluetooth and just listen to all this shit without having to flip the record over, and there's no need for all these fucking things to be taking up space in our house? When does it end? We're gonna be on hoarders! I've circled the runway here for a few paragraphs with a stream of consciousness that I'm sure is making you seriously question why you purchased this book. So let's prepare for landing. I love a good album, and throughout this book, which you're now having serious second thoughts about, I will share some of my favorites with you. A playlist is great, but sometimes it's fun to just commit. For a workout, a drive, a hang on the couch with your woman, or a woman you want to be your woman, or by yourself in a Fairfield Inn in Bakersfield with a bottle of Schlitz. Commit to the album, The Journey. Rob McIntyre was the former strength conditioning coach at FCW. We'd pile into cars to save gas money and drive the 40 minutes out into the swamps of Florida to train at his customized warehouse gym, Hard Knock South. Rob was something of a philosopher, one of the smartest guys I ever met. He would begin training sessions with stories and lessons, often quite educational, discussing strategies of war, or the incredible courage of our armed forces and the sacrifices they've made for our freedom. Other times, we'd all watch some clips from cakefarts.com. Not for enjoyment, not to make fun of it, but just to marvel at the ridiculousness and the beauty of the world we live in. Rob liked to have an album of the day. When we began a workout, he'd put on, for example, Slayer, Rain in Blood, 1986. Rob would explain the history of the album, the state of music at the time it was recorded, and its cultural impact. Now, when this training session began and the notes of the first track came through the speakers, in this case, Angel of Death, we were locked in. We were focused. No distractions. No external interruptions. We were listening to Rain in Blood and pumping some fucking iron. Committing to the album is a surprisingly effective tool to achieve focus on a task. Whether that task is to have a productive training session, score with that special chick, decorate your Christmas tree, which my wife is doing as I write this, or just have a good time alone in your hotel room with your malt liquor. I've somehow hit the tarmac, pulled up, got the plane back in the air, and I'm circling the runway again, so I'll finish this now. Renee is right. I am long-winded. We'll call these recommendations Spin-It-Ups, and we'll start with the first CD I ever owned, Metallica, Master of Puppets, 1986. I don't know how I acquired Master of Puppets. I was in the 5th grade and had a rudimentary CD player. Maybe I traded some baseball cards or wrestling tape for it. I just remember another kid in school telling me about all these different metal bands and how cool they were. I didn't know shit about music at this point, but after hearing about all this heavy metal awesomeness that was going on that I wasn't part of, I felt like I needed to be on the inside. I wanted to be cool too, to learn about all the new bands before I ever heard their music by reading copies of Metal Edge at the newsstand. Metallica, Pantera, Slayer, they all certainly looked cool. Master of Puppets begins with 38 seconds of Spanish guitar. Relaxing, mellow. You may picture Catherine Zeta-Jones, sniffing Romagna flowers in The Mask of Zorro. You're enjoying a nice breeze. Then BAM! The rest of the opening track, Battery, announces its presence with grandiose electric guitar. Then it just gets fucking nasty. This album does not let up from there. The classic title track, the spooky Welcome Home Sanitarium, Disposable Heroes rips right into Leper Messiah. Those two songs have always felt like one long piece of work to me. Next, it's the epic and inspiring Orion, which highlights the legendary Cliff Burton's bass. Then we finish with Damage Inc., which starts with what I used to think were whale sounds before just getting in your face with some mean, aggressive, unapologetic metalhead bangery. This album fucking rules. Personal story. One day I get a call from my dad. He wants me to bring my truck to meet him at Cub Foods over by the Dayton Mall near his home in Springboro, Ohio. The vehicle in question is a beat-up 97 Ford Ranger with the ignition box hanging out under the steering wheel because I lost my keys and I had to have an associate of mine hotwire it. Dad told me to bring my buddy Mario, a strapping Italian fellow I met on the first day of first grade. He was the Iceman to my goose as we navigated the route from adolescence to adulthood. Dad didn't say why he requested we come, but I knew why. I had a truck. If you have a truck, you know you are the one who everyone calls when they need something moved. Mario and I moved a lot of people. We moved my dad twice. We moved his wife, Julie. We moved brothers, sisters, family, friends, acquaintances, girlfriends, cousins, godparents, wrestlers, friends, accountants, personal trainers, strippers. Sometimes we moved people by accident. Sometimes we moved people who didn't even want to move just because we had the momentum. Being the guy with the truck can be a curse. I'd get the call, and then I'd call Mario. He was my guy. We had a system, being two strong college-aged guys. Mario was actually in college. I was a poor aspiring wrestler. We could effortlessly turn a corner carrying a dresser without scuffing the walls or knocking pictures off the wall. We could easily get a mattress down or upstairs without saying a word to one another. Simpatico. Got a 50-inch flat screen? No problem. We're the best, babe. We talked about turning it into a business, but we couldn't think of a cool name. I'm not sure why we're meeting my dad in the parking lot of a grocery store. Usually it was a pretty straightforward job. Boxes, couches, box springs, mattresses. We might be hauling an old fridge or washing machine to the dump. But whatever we hauled, I hope to score a $20 payday at least. Today's work, as it turned out, would be pro bono, but I gained something much more valuable than some gas money. Dad arrived at Cub Foods' parking lot, and Mario and I followed him into the store. He instructed us to both grab a cart, and we followed him through the store as he instructed us to fill the carts with groceries. What kind? What families eat for dinner? Fill them up. We followed him up and down the aisles. We stocked up on eggs and milk. Then we were instructed to focus on non-perishables: rice, canned goods, pancake mix, cereal. Dad asked, "What kind of cereal do kids like? Get some stuff kids like." We loaded up on sugary cereals: Golden Grams, Fruity Pebbles, Cocoa Puffs, and my personal favorite, the motherfucking Sugar Bear. From there, it was fruit snacks, Capri Suns. We grabbed giant-sized tubs of laundry detergent. Our carts are loaded. What the fuck is going on here? Is my dad preparing for nuclear winter? He was in the National Guard. Does he have Cold War PTSD? You know, the wall came down, right? And come to think of it, who are these kids we're buying for? Did my sister have quintuplets? Can we get her on a reality show? Also, who's paying for all this shit? After winding through the entire store and going full supermarket sweep in this bitch, we came to the checkout counter to start the long process of scanning and bagging this sizable haul. While the clerk was tackling this task item by item, beep, beep, my dad took this time to give Mario and me further instructions. We were to load the groceries into the truck and follow him to an address. I have more questions. What the fuck is going on? But Dad is reluctant to give me details. He paid for the groceries with his debit card. As we were loading the truck, I pressed him for further information. Nothing. As he walked away to get in his truck, he just said, "Follow me." We arrived in a residential neighborhood in Dayton, Ohio. Not a great neighborhood. Houses in disrepair, lawns a foot tall, graffiti, broken windows, rusted out vehicles. My dad stopped at a stop sign a couple turns away from our drop point. We stopped behind him. He got out, walked up to our driver's side window. I rolled the window down. Dad instructed us to knock on the door of a specific house, out of view from where we were, and deliver the groceries to the family inside. Most importantly, when asked about the source of this delivery, we were to respond, "Anonymous friends," and nothing else. To say anything else besides "anonymous friends" would be a breach of our mission. Who are these people? I asked. Doesn't matter. We parked and walked up to the home. One story. Cracked paint, rusty steel fence. We had bulky plastic bags stretched to their capacity as our sides. The man who answered the door, slightly concerned at the intrusion at first, was clearly a machine shop worker. He's wiry, ashen, clearly smokes 2 packs of Marlboros a day. He was wearing an open plaid shirt over a wife beater, grease under his nails. I like him. It takes all of 3 seconds for him to figure out what was going on, and a warm smile came over his face. Tears welled up inside his eyes before Mario or I could even stammer out any awkward hello. He saw the groceries. His lip quivering, the kind of humble gratitude so evident in his body as he shook made it clear instantly that this dude was in a real tough spot in life. Something bad had happened. He needed help. Now. Suddenly, excitement! Kids, maybe 3 or 4 of various ages, rush out the door. Mario and I are swarmed like it's the fucking puppy bowl. We are trying to go back and forth from the house to the truck, bringing in the supplies this family obviously needs desperately. The man is elated. You'd think he just won the lottery. He's praising Jesus. He's quoting scripture to... I'm not sure to who, but he's damn sure excited. The kids are helping us unload the truck. They're fucking stoked. It was a wild scene. In all the action, this man asked me and Mario once or twice where all this came from. Who are you? Anonymous friends. We don't hang around and make conversation. We were in and out in maybe 3 minutes flat. It was a hailstorm of canned goods and praised Jesuses. We were like the SEAL team from the militant wing of the Salvation Army. And then, we vanished. Meeting my dad back at the rendezvous point, I must admit we were on a bit of a high. That was a whole lot of excitement. A whole lot of people being happy. I gotta know, man, you gotta tell us what the hell that was all about. My dad told us about the man to whom we just delivered those groceries. His wife was battling cancer. A long and grueling battle. Their medical bills were out of control. They couldn't afford to pay their bills or eat. I don't remember all the details, but they were in a real bad spot. Desperate. The man worked in the shop at Laird Plastics, where my dad was the branch manager. Dad started in the shop for minimum wage, so he knew it was important to keep his ear to the ground and be aware of what was going on with everyone on his team. He'd heard of this family's troubles, and he knew they needed groceries. Right now. He took it upon himself to fix the problem. We're the good guys. The most important part of all this was that my dad not only didn't need anyone to give him credit for this, oh, that Dan is such a great guy, he actively refused credit for this. Anonymous friends. Dad did not want that guy to feel any embarrassment over his boss buying every fucking box of cereal in Dayton to make sure his family ate. He explained to me that true, pure charity should be anonymous. You help your fellow man not because you want a tax break or a ticker tape parade for your generosity. You do it because it's the right thing to do. The man never found out. Flick pick. Point Break. 1991. Keanu Reeves. Patrick Swayze. I have a hard time picking my all-time favorite anything. But over the years, it's become clear and undeniable. Point Break is my favorite movie of all time. If you are of the opinion that any other movie than Point Break is the greatest movie of all time, well then, I will not attempt to understand, let alone tolerate your viewpoint. I am right and you are wrong. Nah, just kidding. That's what makes talking about movies so much fun. Everybody's got their own favorites. For me, Point Break. What's not to love? This movie has everything. Bank robbers, surfing, skydiving, memorable quotes, and iconic scenes. Peak Gary Busey. Utah. Get me too. And of course, there's a smoking hot chick. Lori Petty with that short haircut. The scene where she changes clothes at the beach with the magical towel chick. Bro. This flick even has one of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. What really drives this movie is the two lead actors, Keanu Reeves and the great Patrick Swayze himself, one of the coolest dudes of all time. And don't say shit about Dirty Dancing, because you wouldn't have the balls to dance like that even if you could. Swayze plays Brodie, the Zen guru surfer, leader of a pack of radical surfing bank robbers. Trust me, it's dope. Keanu plays Johnny Utah, former hotshit QB from Ohio, fresh out of the academy, stud FBI recruit. Things have been said about Keanu's acting. Well, it seems like he's done pretty well for himself to me, but what do I know? In any case, Keanu's trademark delivery and personality is Johnny Utah. Swayze is Brodie. One of the most interesting things in this film to me, besides all the obvious cool shit, is the juxtaposition of the two main characters, which is first displayed during the opening credits, going back and forth between Utah, corn-fed Midwestern QB shooting 100% target practice at Quantico, and Brodie, a free spirit, a searcher, just surfing the waves. Quantico is a town in Virginia where the FBI Academy is located. For some reason, it's raining in this scene. I don't know if they would really do target practice in the rain, but it does make the scene way cooler. On my United flight from LA to Tokyo for my debut in New Japan, they had Point Break among the movie selections. I hadn't seen it in years. A couple of cocktails and the focus of being stuck in a pod for 10 hours while all I had to do was watch movies, get drunk, and sleep. and nobody could get a hold of me even if they wanted to? I've never enjoyed a movie more. It put me at peace and felt like a good omen. Renee and I watched Point Break with a balcony door open to the salty sea winds coming from Imperial Beach in San Diego. We had some excellent calamari. It was the perfect setting to enjoy my favorite movie of all time. We could see the surfers below, which really fit the motif. Let's be clear, however. No matter how much I love this movie or Swayze's performance, I don't fuck with the ocean. Maybe I'll wade out ankle deep, but I keep my ass on the land. I don't want to get stung by no jellyfish. You ever read about a box jellyfish? And I do not fuck with sharks. I only occasionally go out far enough to where if I get attacked by a shark, my feet are firmly on the bottom and I can punch down. They have their element. I have mine. Let's keep it that way. I can say with almost absolute certainty I will not be eaten by a shark. My ass won't even be in the water. He's not coming back. I am an FBI agent! This game we both lose. What a radical movie. Author's note. We did not discuss the 2015 remake of Point Break because it's never to be spoken of again. It does not exist. It's been taken care of by top men. Top men. Foley. By the fall of 2012, I had been on the road since the day after WrestleMania 28, doing dark matches and house show loops, largely just sitting and catering at the stands, getting progressively more and more pissed off. The Raw after Mania in Miami, I wrestled JTG in a dark match and got a nice response from the crowd. A good portion of the more hardcore fans that attended Mania Week actually knew who I was. I was pumped. It was the time of the year for debuts, new characters, new angles, and I was about to come in and fuck everybody's world up. I had the perfect angle to do it. Coming back through Gorilla after the match, I had a conversation with Hunter. This thing's picking up steam. It looks like a shoot, he said. Hell yeah, I replied. Then I recounted to him how the previous day in the Access Green Room, I'd been sitting at a table with Mark Henry, who had no idea who I was at the time. He asked some other folks at the table, "You hear about Foley last night, man?" Some motherfucker came up to him in the lobby talking about how he ruined a generation and he needs to be held accountable or some damn thing. They got that motherfucker out of there. Lucky I wasn't there. I'd have slapped the shit out of that stupid motherfucker. I sat quietly at the table and didn't say anything. The motherfucker who the world's strongest man was saying he would like to slap the shit out of was me. The previous night, we had planted a seed for the potential angle of a lifetime between a yet-to-debut on WWE TV Dean Ambrose and the hardcore legend Mick Foley. Foley had come back to the hotel after the Hall of Fame ceremony and was in the lobby meeting fans. I was up at the top of the escalator awaiting his arrival. When he showed up, I let him mingle with the people for a couple minutes before coming up and introducing myself. Then I got in his face and explained that he was responsible for ruining a whole generation. My generation. A generation that went out and nearly killed themselves trying to emulate him. I told him he needed to be held accountable. "What does accountable mean to you?" he responded, clearly rattled. It was all part of the plan. I was booted out of there by security while fans in the lobby vociferously told me to go fuck myself. I was shown to the elevator and returned to my room. Mission accomplished. I had met Mick for the first time in the green room a few days before, and we agreed to ad-lib the scene, meant only to be caught on camera phones and come off as very real. The idea came from a day when I was bored in Dusty's promo class at FCW. Mick had just returned to the company, and in my mind, there was no way not to book us together. If he still had some matches left in him, with our similar histories and our penchant for intense promos, it not only made perfect sense, it was a dream match for me and a hell of a way to debut. If they gave Foley to anyone but me, I'd be pissed. We were tailor-made for each other. This was my match. I hated Wednesdays in FCW. My least favorite day of the week. Fucking promo class, or, excuse me, the art of communication with Dusty Rhodes. Basically, everyone would go up and cut a promo, or people would do a skit or whatever. In theory, this practice could be beneficial to a talent with little experience talking in front of people, but I just couldn't wrap my brain around it. Participating in this made me feel foolish. I hated it. Allegedly, the office watched the promos we did every week, which I didn't really believe. In fact, I almost never put in any real effort in promo class. Dusty would try to get me to explore different ideas and try out new characters. We had a semi-mild feud over the fact that I refused to try. A lot of talent at FCW were coming up with new wacky gimmicks every week in hopes the office would bite on something. I chose not to do this for 2 reasons. For one, if I fucked around just for fun one week and came out with a full costume and a new character, I'm the beekeeper. I would run the risk they actually saw it and liked it, and then I'd be on TV in a fucking beekeeping outfit and my career would be over 6 months later. They knew exactly who I was. They knew I could talk. For another, if I had a really good idea for a promo or a concept and the office actually did watch this stuff, I sure as hell wasn't going to give away good material to the fuckstick creative team and have my ideas stolen and given to some other dipshit. No, sir. I'll keep my good ideas to myself, thank you. When Foley came back into the WWE fold, however, I wanted to scream from the rooftops that they better not even fucking think about having him work with anybody else but me. And I chose to express this in a promo. What would be my motivation for wanting to take down Mick? To prove who's more hardcore? No, that's lame. To try to take the torch from my hero. Jon. No, I gotta hate this motherfucker. Why would I hate him? I devised a concept where I looked around at my contemporaries in the indie scene, especially the deathmatch scene, and realized we were all poor. Our bodies were torn up. We had no future. We'd suffer long-term health issues. In actuality, some of these guys were now dead. I decided I would blame Mick Foley for inspiring all of us to jump off our roofs and balconies as kids and then eventually mutilate ourselves in the name of being hardcore. Like Mick, our messiah. It was all bullshit he sold us. Where were our beefaroni commercials? Where were our beautiful wives, families, and fat contracts? Fuck Mick Foley. I would be the lucky one. I made it out. I would go to WWE and I would rid the world of the hardcore legend, but not before I put him on trial for his crimes. It was intense stuff. It was good. Maybe too good. The office saw the promo. Hunter ended up seeing it. He bit, and he bit hard. It was a green light. Twitter was just starting to become a big deal. I had no idea what it was when they told me the plan. First, I'd have a public confrontation with Mick. The hope was that the video of the incident would gain traction on the internet. Secondly, I was to start insulting him on Twitter, a proto-social media feud. They made an official Twitter account for me and anyone at FCW who didn't have one to avoid suspicion this might be a work. I was instructed to just start talking shit, basically. They told me to become a presence on social media and tweet all kinds of different stuff, as well as the angle-related bits to gain followers and make it all seem real. It seems hilarious now that I, of all people, was made to be in a social media feud, but at the time I was into it. Seemed like some cutting-edge shit. So I played with this Twitter. It was amusing, and I used it effectively for my purpose. I started posting links to videos of backyard wrestlers nearly killing themselves in cringe-worthy clips, attaching the hashtag, "Thanks, Mick." See, I know how hashtags work. I figured that shit out a decade ago. The plan was for me to debut at Extreme Rules, the pay-per-view after Mania, and slam Mick's head through a car windshield after building heat in a work-shoot feud online. Shit started getting a little weird. At a SmackDown taping in Hampton, Virginia, the plan was for Mick to confront me in front of a good number of wrestlers about my online activities. I guess it was supposed to be some working the boys type shit, which is always a poor idea, but again, at the time, I was into it. It was different. So Mick says something to me in front of a bunch of the boys and specifically says, "Don't talk about my family," in reference to something I must have tweeted. I'm then brought into the talent relations office and told in order to blow the incident out of proportion and get the rumor mill started, I am to fly out immediately as if the incident had resulted in me being sent home for some sort of insubordination. I am told to go tweet about this. I go to the airport. I get on the flight, and I take to Twitter to voice my displeasure. I even take a picture of my boarding pass so it's clear I'm actually flying out just as SmackDown has started, hopefully adding some realism and making it all murky for the hardcore fans following this story. Then it gets weirder. We go to London for TVs. I have a shitty, cheap phone that doesn't work in Europe, so I'm basically out of communication for a few days. In my mind, since we're working the boys, when Mick said, "Don't talk about my family," in front of those who I thought we were working, that was a signal to me that talking about his family was exactly what he wanted me to do. At the TV hotel in London, I go to the business center and get on the computer and tweet more shit about his family because that's what I think I'm supposed to do. Mick had been texting me that while this angle was going great, he actually did not want me to make mention of his family. In Europe with my cheap phone, I was not receiving these texts, and happily went on to do exactly what Mick had asked me not to. Mick did not appreciate this. We didn't know each other well, and he just figured I was an asshole. He was pretty upset with me and almost pulled the plug on the whole thing. When I returned to U.S. soil, my phone lit up with messages, among them several long texts from Mick asking me what the fuck my problem was. I was mortified. I would have never said anything intentionally disrespectful or out of line with our story if not for the fact that that's exactly what I thought he wanted me to do. I cursed my shitty phone for blowing the biggest opportunity of my life. I profusely apologized, explained that it was a misunderstanding, and we smoothed it over quickly, but there must be a lesson to be learned here about trying so hard to work other people that you end up not knowing what's real and what's not. Crisis averted, we were back on. Dean Ambrose versus Mick Foley on a collision course for some kind of gimmick match like a cage or something at SummerSlam. Sure, it would be a star-making performance. I figured I'd be cutting promos and talking mad shit to the top guys on Raw and main event segments in no time. All I had to do was do what I do and get over. Give me a mic and get out of the way. I'd be the top heel by the end of the year, I figured. Then I got a call from Hunter, and it all went up in flames. They couldn't get Mick medically cleared. That was it. He was done. It was over. I was crushed. I don't know the details of Mick's evaluation, but I believe it was due to his history with concussions. Mick had tried. He suggested to the doctor we could work an entire match around his leg and play it as safe as possible. 'Twas not to be. I believed that feud could go down as an all-time what could have been thing. But looking at it now, I see it differently than I did then. At the time, I assumed it would be Mick and I coming up with our own angle and cutting our own interviews, crafting our own story. In FCW, I was largely left on my own devices. I'd never read a script in my life. I'd heard the phrase scripted promos, but I just thought it was a turn of phrase. Like it's a television show with a format that's timed out. When I heard about scripted promos or heard the term verbiage, a word that now makes me physically ill when I hear it, I thought it was just TV industry jargon, cold open, pyro, ballyhoo, and all that. I didn't take it literally. It hadn't hit me that there would be actual scripts to memorize. I thought the writers just came up with ideas, book matches, and angles. The concept of somebody else writing words for me was completely alien. Had the feud between Dean Ambrose and Mick Foley actually came to pass? The reality is, I would have shown up to that first TV with a truckload of promo in my head. Then, I would have been handed a script. I would have reacted poorly to this, to say the least. I would have immediately been deemed difficult to work with. I would have been confused and frustrated that they wanted me to read from a script. Red light of the camera on, live mic in hands, I would have trusted my own instincts over some writers and been summarily punished for it. I would have quickly developed a bad reputation and they would have soured on my attitude. Vince wouldn't feel he could trust me, and the push would have fizzled within a couple of months. A feud between the Moxley of today, or even 2009 versus 95, 96 Cactus Jack, I'm confident would be a classic. An emotional, cerebral, and violent campaign. But the likely scenario in 2012 WWE is we would have been handcuffed. It's possible that Mick, being a Hall of Famer and an all-time promo master, could have afforded us a little more freedom, but I doubt they would have let us take it what we wanted. I would have come in so excited and so confident. The whole thing would be clear in my head. It would have been real to me at that point. To be handed a script would have been unmercifully galling and resulted in a clash. For all my passion and creativity, I would have been future endeavored or sent straight back to developmental. Joke Claudio told me, I accidentally swallowed a bunch of Scrabble tiles. My next trip to the bathroom could spell disaster. Why I don't ride a motorcycle. I'd love to be a motorcycle guy. Often people think I am. Probably because I have such a sick jacket game. I like the thought of flying down the 15 on a Harley, burning through the desert, but I am not, in fact, a motorcycle guy. I've often had to clarify for people when telling a story about crashing my bike that I'm referring to my mountain bike, a Specialized 29er. The look on the listener's face is always disappointment. Yes, listener, despite the plethora of leather jackets I've sported over the years and my innate ability to look cool as fuck in them, I do not ride motorcycles. The reason I don't is simple. It's the same reason I don't like being on the top rope. I'm clumsy. I know what you're thinking. In the ring, you move like a panther. Well, maybe not a panther, but you don't seem that clumsy. When I'm in the ring and my brain is switched on and focused, performing moves I've practiced thousands of times, then yes, I can create the illusion that I'm a reasonable facsimile of a world-class athlete. But outside the ring, I can be shockingly ungainly. It might be because I can be absent-minded, a daydreamer, my head in the clouds and not paying attention to what my feet are doing. I've fallen down our stairs at least 4 times, partly because my wife hates carpet and running in socks on hardwood can be hazardous. I always wear shoes around the house now, but the threat always looms. Just the other day, I ate shit face first on the sidewalk while out for a run. Why? I couldn't tell you. But I did make sure to signal the concerned onlookers that I was okay with a double bicep pose and a thumbs up. One time I ran to answer the front door. I bounded down the 2-step landing and somehow managed to launch myself into the air with such velocity that it defied the laws of thermodynamics. Did I step on one of those things from Super Mario? I thought I was walking down the steps. How am I in a fully horizontal Superman-like position hovering 3 feet above the ground? This can't end well. My life is often like a scene from Home Alone. We're expecting a child as I write this, and I fear my ultimate demise will result from a Tonka truck or maybe some Hot Wheels left on the floor. Which brings me back to the motorcycle. If I rode a motorcycle, it would be an inevitability that one day I'd be cruising down the highway, feeling myself, when I noticed the gorgeous sunset on the horizon. The sight would fill me with joy and inspiration. I'd consider all the splendor and beauty of this world and my place in it, and then bam! Roadkill. Or I'd get distracted by a Pizza Hut sign. Either way, same result. Every time I've considered getting a motorcycle, I come back to the same conclusion. I would be a danger to myself and others. I'm keeping myself on 4 wheels. I'll tell you a story that illustrates this point further. September 19th, 2015, Henderson, Nevada. Renee's birthday. In recent weeks, she had casually mentioned her desire for a motor scooter. She had just moved into an apartment with me in Las Vegas and didn't have a car yet. She used my truck when I was on the road, but if we wanted to be in 2 places at once, it presented a problem. For whatever reason, she liked the idea of a scooter. Her friend, the incomparable Amy Dumas, has had a Vespa for years and loves it. Seems like fun, bopping around town, going to yoga, get your nails done. Now remember, brothers, you gotta crush your woman's birthday. And with that in mind, you know what I did. Oh man, y'all making this too easy. I decided I'll buy Renee a scooter. I went to a dealer in Vegas, described my needs, and was soon loading my truck up with a badass little piece of scootery. They rigged the engine so it could reach speeds up to 50 miles an hour. We were still in the apartment, so I had no place to store this hog until September 19th. I rented a storage unit on St. Rose Parkway, and inside I parked a gift that was sure to make me a hero. September 19th arrives. And even better, my sister is in town. Now I have double the audience for my best boyfriend in the world moment. Now there are 2 women to discuss how great this gift is, how great I am, how they are all so lucky to have me in their lives, how to debut the scooter. I can't just come down the aisle with a generic ring jacket and raise one arm to the crowd. This ain't earrings. This ain't a basket of decorative soaps. This is a scooter, damn it. I need pomp and circumstance. I need to create a moment they'll never forget. Let's take a ride, Ben. This is cool guy shit. My plan was to park the truck about 30 feet away from the storage unit so my audience could see me enter the unit 30 feet in front and to their left. They won't know what's inside and will have no idea what to expect. I will get on the bike, start it up inside the unit, anticipation building. At the precise right moment, I'll know when I feel it. I'll come flying out of the storage unit like Ghost Rider, leaving a trail of flames behind me. In my mind, it's going to be better than any pageantry Evel Knievel ever came up with. There will be confetti, trumpets, maybe a speedboat pulling one of those towers of water skiers. It's going to be fucking cool. I'll be a hero. Renee will be the envy of women worldwide, and my sister will know she has the coolest brother in the world. I know how to gift. Bitches won't know what hit them. The moment arrived. My audience got in the truck expecting they were going to Target or some shit. Little do they know they're going on a roller coaster ride, about to experience true cool, the perfect birthday gift. I get on St. Rose Parkway and start going in the opposite direction of our supposed destination. I say nothing. Where are we going? Renee asked. I say nothing. We drove a few more miles and I remained silent as Lauren and Renee chatted. We eventually reached the storage facility. Renee asked more questions, but sunglasses on, hands steady on the wheel. I betrayed nothing. I have the surgical precision of a hitman as we pull up to the gate and I punch in a code that swings the door open, provoking suspicion. Why do you have a storage locker? Renee asked. She would later admit that she thought this was finally where the other shoe was going to drop and she found out I had a meth lab or some shit. I betrayed nothing, not saying a word, completely stoic. In time, my dear. I parked the truck and got out. Calmly. All business. Renee's questions faded into the distance behind me as I walked the 30 feet and put the key into the padlock. I intentionally looked around to make sure no one was watching. The suspense building with every passing moment. I opened the door and disappeared inside. Got him right where I want him. A captive audience. I prepared the bike, took off the e-brake, started her up. I waited for the exact right moment. 2 minutes passed. I heard the truck door slam. My audience has gotten out of the truck now, curious and impatient. Right where I want them. It was time to fly. Vroom! Came blasting out of the storage unit on my metal steed. I made a hard left away from the audience, and I could hear the cheers behind me. Got him. I circled the storage complex, and now I was coming at the audience from behind. More cheers as I came back into view. Renee was jumping up and down as I zipped by at 30 miles per hour. Big smiles. Woohoo! This couldn't have gone better. Exactly how I pictured it. Now it was time to just sit back and bask in the glory of adulation. The best boyfriend in the world. I circled the complex again and made another pass, this time at 35 miles per hour. I pulled my shades down and gave a wink. The coolest guy in the world. I decided to make one more pass, show off one more time for the audience before slowing to a stop amidst my fawning, adoring public. The coolest guy. Shit! I hit the front brake. My ass is definitely not on the seat anymore. In fact, it seems to be about 3 feet below me. At this point, it became one of those slow-mo scenes from Deadpool. I definitely have 2 fingers left on one handlebar, but I can feel them coming off. I'm going airborne. It's time to tuck and roll, babe. When I hit the front brake, which you are not supposed to do on a scooter, I was catapulted over the handlebars, ass over tea kettle, 10 feet into the air. I must have flown 20 feet. Thank God I fall down for a living. That's the only explanation I have for how I was able to stay relaxed and somehow fucking ninja roll back to my feet, where I immediately did a quick 5-point diagnostic on myself. No broken bones, no bleeding, no concussion. My brains aren't splattered anywhere. Just a little road rash. I'm alive. I know I'm not like Patrick Swayze in Ghost because I see my wife and sister running toward me in shock and horror. "Oh my God, are you okay?" they shout in unison. I tried to play it cool. As my audience ran up to me in panic, I explained, "You see, what I was demonstrating there was the most important safety rule of this scooter. Never hit the front brake." But there was no saving this one. I was a geek. Renee did love the gift, which miraculously emerged unharmed, and despite my near-death experience, I did, in fact, crush her birthday. On the drive home, I was hoping for, "You're the best boyfriend," and instead what I got over and over was, "I thought you were a goner." Damn it. As always, next year. Travel and favorite cities. I've been able to travel the world on another man's dime. It's one of the perks of the job. For a chunk of that time, I've had my wife by my side, which is even cooler. Renee and I have listened to music in a piano bar on Beale Street in Memphis and done shots on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. We've hung out at the Viper Room in Hollywood and cracked fresh crab legs at Pike Place Market in Seattle. We've meditated at a Buddhist temple and did a weird sound bath in a yurt in Sedona. That was some total divas bullshit, but still cool. We've made love on a balcony in Times Square, hours after I successfully defended the WWE Championship at MSG. Well, bitch. We've done karaoke in Tokyo and filled up on gas and stocked up on snacks at Buc-ee's truck stops in Texas. The best truck stops. Wrestling 250 plus days a year does two things. It makes you never want to travel again, and it makes you want to do nothing but travel. I was in and out of New Zealand in 24 hours, but it seemed pretty cool. I did a signing at a mall, wrestled that night, and was back on a plane immediately thereafter. But looking out at the mountains from the window and checking out some travel brochures from the airport, I decided I needed to get back and really explore this place one day, when I got time. I still hope to. I hope to return to many places where I was in and out too fast to truly experience the place, but still there long enough just to get a taste. Got another shot in another town tomorrow night. Gotta roll. But also, how good is home? I've realized I never truly had a specific home until I met my wife. Renee is my home, and with her I've lived all over the world. From a fun night at a motel in Coldwater, Michigan, the home of Dan Severn, where I opened her wine bottle with a pen, to staying at Mr. C's in LA, getting free bellinis at check-in. But my official home is in Las Vegas. My stuff, my couch, my bed, my garage, my wife's little decorative touches everywhere. My dogs. If the dogs aren't there, just a little something's missing. We bring them everywhere we can. Blue's fat ass can't fly commercial. I've driven that fat bitch across the country, even flew the bougie little fucker private to Jacksonville twice, just so we could all be together and make away from home into home. Cincinnati is my original home. Will always be my number one home away from home, but I have others. Places that have taken me in, welcomed me. Places I've had great experiences, where I've enjoyed and explored. Places where I've grown, loved, lost, laughed, cried. Many places where I land at the airport and hop in a rental car. I know exactly where I'm going without having to use my GPS. I'm in a home away from home. Throughout this book, I'll tell you about a few of my homes away from home and why I love them. I encourage you to find some of your own. Whether it's a quick day drive or a Southwest flight to wherever's cheap. It's a big world out there, and trust me, it's not as scary as you think. I'll start with where I currently reside. Sin City. Welcome to fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. I love that recording that plays over the PA in the airport. One thing about having a job that takes place on the road is you can make your residence any place you want. In early 2013, I had been living in Tampa since May of 2011. The Shield had been on the main roster for a few months. I was starting to make a little money, and I was officially free from developmental. Change was in the air, and I felt like it was time to move on. I loved Tampa, but it seemed like everybody lived there, and it was where I had been stationed. It was a place I was in for a specific reason, and that objective had been accomplished. Now I wanted a little slice of the world for myself. Now that I could live anywhere, where should I go? I first looked at the tax-free states, Florida, Texas, Nevada. Wait, Nevada? As in Las Vegas, Nevada? The entertainment capital of the world? The fight capital of the world? I researched life in Las Vegas. I quizzed Ryback, born and raised in Las Vegas, and I had an enlightening conversation with Brian Danielson, who'd spent time living in Vegas. He loved it, told me about all the great vegan bakeries, which I have still not, as of yet, visited. Obviously, the first thing you think of when you think of Las Vegas is the bright lights, the gambling, partying until dawn. But Brian was the farthest thing from a partier of any sort. Brian is a man you're more likely to see picking berries in his garden than being within 100 yards of anything debaucherous. If he liked living in Vegas, it must be nice. I had narrowed it down to either Vegas or Austin, Texas. I flipped a coin and it was Vegas. I was single back then and didn't see that changing anytime soon, so I figured I'd try it for 1 year, and if I didn't like it, I'd try the other for a year. If I didn't like either one, I'd try somewhere else. I never left Las Vegas. At least not as of this writing. I fell in love immediately. I left my apartment in Tampa with nothing more than I could carry with me on the imminent European tour. We landed back in the States 2 weeks later, did TV tapings, and then instead of flying to Tampa, I flew to fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. I'd never been here before. I hopped in a cab and gave the driver the address to where I had procured a modest one-bedroom apartment. "You gamble?" the driver asked. "No, I still don't really, aside from throwing a little action on a fight occasionally or killing time on a slot machine at the airport." "Good. Don't start," he replied. He explained to me how many people he's seen over the years come to this town and leave with nothing. Sage advice. The cab driver gave me his card and dropped me off at the office. I went in and explained that I thought I lived there now. They had been expecting me. A woman walked me to my new second-floor digs. You could see the stratosphere from the balcony, mountains in the distance. She gave me the numbers to call to set up my various utilities and left me alone in the empty apartment with my 2 bags. I called to set up my electricity. It would take 24 hours to turn on. Well, shit, I'm not going to build a campfire in my living room. I called the cab driver and he came back to pick me up and drop me off at the Mandalay Bay, where I'd price-lined a suite for something like $36. Time to explore Sin City. I checked in at the Mandalay and was prepared to explore my new hometown. I couldn't believe the dope-ass room I got for so cheap. The good vibrations were flowing already when I realized that I was out of chewing tobacco. Terrible habit. I figured I would have to find a gas station to buy some, but I was right in the middle of resort land, so I'd probably have to walk across the highway or some such pain in the ass. I came out of the elevator on the main casino floor, took a few steps, and immediately in front of me was one of those little bodega gift shop type stores that are all over the strip. Behind the counter, I see stacks of cans of tobacco, all flavors and brands. Sweet. That's convenient, but wait, there's more. They got Red Man, cigarettes, any kind of liquor, beer, wine, champagne, cigars, literally any kind of Sin City supplies you could want. I love this place. I went on a solo exploration of as much of the strip as I could over the next 36 hours. The details of the events that occurred on my first night in town will remain classified, unless that chick with the face tattoo ever writes a book, or a friend, who I'm pretty sure was a witch, does. I couldn't wait to tell all my friends back on the road how cool Vegas was, and now I get to live there. Even though I don't really gamble, I still like casinos. There's something fun about them. I just like walking around, posting up at a bar with Renee and people watching. I like the atmosphere. I would soon grow to love living here for reasons that have nothing to do with casinos or the strip or even staying up past 9 p.m. First came falling in love with the desert. Yes, it does, in fact, get hot as a motherfucker here. We can't walk the dogs from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the summer, but there's something about the feel of the desert heat wrapping around you like a blanket when the sun's already down and you're taking a piss off your back porch. I'd never really hiked before. You know where I'm from? I don't know shit about no trails, but my first trip to Red Rock Canyon solidified my relationship with this place. It's beautiful, quiet, calm, eerie, humbling. I hiked the Calico Tanks Trail in Red Rock, my favorite local hike and the one I usually bring visitors on. I'd never breathed air like this, never seen scenery like this in real life. I'm walking across giant stones like I'm on Mars. I didn't realize I've been searching for quiet like this my whole life. No sirens, no cars, no yelling, just my thoughts. Clarity, a healthy sweat, a raised heart rate. Breathing a little heavy but not blown up. Endorphins, nature. I don't feel like some cog in a big media machine or a number on some government paperwork. I feel like a human. I feel alive. I feel like I felt when I was 7 years old playing in a creek exploring the woods behind our apartment. I feel like myself. I love hiking. And if you thought that was cheesy, you can go get fucked. I come to what looks like the end of the trail and there's a pond, surrounded by cliffs on all sides. I forge on up the cliffs behind the pond because they look climbable, so let's keep going. It's in fact not the end of the trail. The payoff of Calico Tanks Trail is a stunning mountaintop view of Red Rock Canyon and the Las Vegas Valley. I can see for miles, and it's dead silent. I sit and chill on a big-ass rock. I hear wings in the distance. And a hawk emerges from the mountainside, flying toward me, getting closer, startling me. I feel like a 747 is passing overhead. The sound of this bird cutting through the air and the dead silence of the desert. It flies by. Silence again. That was fucking dope. We would pop champagne and celebrate my sister's engagement on that rock. I decided to bike the 15-mile loop around Red Rock, the scenic drive. I got to the first mile marker after pedaling uphill for what seemed like forever and quickly realized I had made a mistake. This sucks. I pedaled on, the first half of the trip miserably trudging uphill, wondering how those motherfuckers in the stupid neon outfits on the side of the road make us look so easy. At the halfway point, there's a lookout. Cars stopped to take pictures of the Las Vegas Valley and Red Rock Canyon. It was like I popped a few oxys looking out over the valley, checking out the mountains, seeing how much ground I'd covered. My truck was a tiny speck in the distance in the visitor center parking lot that I couldn't quite make out. I hydrated. I ate a green Nature Valley granola bar, my favorite. Endorphins rushed through my system, and I hopped back on the bike. The second half of the ride is like a roller coaster, mostly downhill, barreling down, cacti rushing past my peripheral vision and then being catapulted up the other side. The mountain peaks were humbling to take in as I came up over the horizon the last few miles of the loop. I rolled back to the truck on a high, skin baked, mouth parched, muscles punished. My soul was full. Get fucked. Our house sits on a golf course, and when they take the flag down at sunset every night, we take the dogs out behind the house to throw the ball and run. The skies are incredible, blues, purples, oranges. I'm filled with gratitude nightly. I love the weather most of the year. I love seeing mountains clear in the distance in the morning. I love the Valley of Fire. I love kitschy little casinos, the Double Down, karaoke at Dino's, rock concerts at the Joint or Brooklyn Bowl. I love the people, the locals. I learned early on there's a clear delineation. A girl born and raised here once explained to me that her dad used to say that tourists are how we make a living, so we got to put up with them. When your waiter or bartender finds out that you're local, it's almost like a facade comes off. They can relax. You're cool. They don't need to put on a show. I've met great friends here. I bought my first house here. I got married for $250 in my backyard at 3 a.m. here. 90 minutes door to door. Proposal to consummation. Pistol Pastor Pete. I added the pistol. I flipped a coin to get here. A gamble brought me to Sin City. Fabulous Las Vegas has indeed been good to me. Favorite cities, homes away from home. Tampa, Florida. Tampa's a great place to live, and I had a couple great years there. Thinking of Tampa puts me in the mind of sitting at a bar on dock, eating coconut shrimp, looking out over the water at sunset. There will usually be a guy playing guitar. Without fail, he'll be playing Wagon Wheel. Hey Mama Rock Me? You know, that song. I swear it's like the official song of Tampa. Sometimes you can spot a dolphin. You will learn more about my time in Tampa with this next story. Tone it down. I was always getting told to tone it down. Whatever that means. Tone it down. Once I did a dark match against Ted DiBiase Jr. in Philly. Our match went great and I cut a kick-ass little promo beforehand. The response from the crowd to all of it was great. I'd been hitting on all cylinders that evening. The note I got from Vince? Tone it down. The next night I went out and had basically the same match in Richmond, except this time I felt strangely self-conscious. It was not as good. I didn't really do anything different, but I felt like I was wrestling in fucking bowling shoes with tone it down ever present in my mind. Afterwards, Hunter came up to me excited and said Vince was impressed. He did everything he was supposed to do, Vince had told him. Great job, Hunter said. What the fuck? I didn't do anything. I might have sucked a little more is all. In the early days of the Shield, as soon as we started wrestling matches, that's all I heard all the time. Tone it down. Strangely, this would always come right after some really awesome shit just happened, or we tore the house down. I'm in the zone, dialed in like a motherfucker, and then here comes some pusscake coming at me with a tone it down. I remember Hunter telling me, you just don't want to become Terry Funk spinning around in a circle like Homer Simpson. Whoop, 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 whoop. Okay, I guess. My thoughts were, did you see me running around in a circle? Also, Terry Funk rules, bitch. But at the time, I was open to exploring the merit of this input. After all, you never stop learning in this business. Sometimes you get great advice from the most unexpected places. It's important to always keep your ears and your mind open. That being said, if I received that advice today, I would tell whoever told me to tone it down to go fuck themselves with a Brillo pad on a stick. If you're a young wrestler listening to this and you take away one thing, let it be the following. If someone comes up to you and tells you to tone it down, don't worry about it. The reason they're telling you that is probably just because they have no charisma. Flick pick. Highlander. 1986. Christopher Lambert, Sean Connery. There can be only one. Although they tried. Multiple Highlander sequels have been attempted over the years, and they've all bombed. The original, however, remains a cult classic science fiction film. Christopher Lambert, the dude who played Raiden in the 90s Mortal Kombat movie, plays Connor MacLeod, the Highlander. He's from the Scottish Highlands. He gets killed in the 16th century, but he comes back to life and is understandably befuddled. He's found by Sean Connery, who explains that they are both immortals. The only way they can die is to be beheaded. For centuries, all the immortals of the world have been sword fighting and trying to chop each other's heads off. When one immortal decapitates another, they experience the quickening. A big-ass lightning storm ensues, and the loser's power is absorbed by the guy with his head still attached. The last immortal left standing will receive the prize, hence, there can be only one. The heel in this movie is awesome. A coked-up Frankenstein-looking immortal played by the guy who played the drill sergeant in Starship Troopers and voices Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob. What puts this film over the top and cements it as a classic is the soundtrack by Queen. Yep, the motherfucking Queen. It includes the badass track Princes of the Universe. Also the theme for the 90s Highlander TV series, which was actually pretty good. Highlander's opening scene actually takes place at, of all places, a pro wrestling event. MacLeod and another immortal sword fight to the death in the parking lot while the fabulous Freebirds are in the ring. No matter what kind of egregious, brightly colored pimp suit I ever saw Michael P.S. Hayes wear at TV, I always had to give him a pass. Not so much because he's a WWE Hall of Famer, but because he was a Highlander. You can never take that away from him. Michael Hayes. There can be only one. Las Vegas, April 4th, 2021, 6:23 p.m. Renee is preparing a beef Wellington for dinner. Who the fuck eats beef Wellington? Is this an episode of The Crown? What the fuck is even going on? Last night we ordered Subway on Postmates. What are you trying to prove? You're probably going to eat one bite of it and decide you want to make a peanut butter sandwich anyway because you're pregnant and insane. Renee is 7 months knocked up, and we're restocking peanut butter at such a rate you'd think we were provisioning rations for World War I battalions in Europe. Anyway, Renee, our Little Miss Cookbook, is using liquid measuring cups for dry goods. I ask her why. She says there is no difference. I maintain that there are both dry and liquid measuring cups. She says no, they are all the same. Bitch, I was in Impact for 2 years. I know they're different. Not Impact Wrestling. Impact was the program they put you in during 7th and 8th grade after you got suspended or arrested enough times. Upon being placed in Impact, you'd spend half your day in the home ec room with Miss Davis, who we actually really liked, learning life skills such as sewing and cooking. We made something called Fast and Flawless Candy, a gooey baked good whose chief ingredient was corn flakes. Sometimes we'd visit nursing homes. When the weather was warm, we would garden, landscaping around the premises of the entire school in plain sight of our classmates who would mock us while they watched through the windows. Now, being one of those kids in Impact was not cool. I guess we were placed there because we were the kids so beyond help that they felt they might as well teach us something, anything we might be able to use to actually feed or clothe ourselves one day. For instance, how to measure dry goods. For 20 years, I thought all Impact brought me was embarrassment. That is until today. I Googled whether there's a difference between dry and liquid measuring cups and won the day. Whoever stuck me in Impact would probably be pleased to know it finally paid off, if they didn't first die of shock after learning I was eating like a king, being served beef Wellington by a beautiful woman while I'm writing a book. St. Louis, Missouri, May 19th, 2013. Did you say fuck out there? Road Dogg asked me. It's the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. I'm in the tunnel by Gorilla as he passes by. I think he's making a joke at first. It's Road Dogg. He's always kidding around. I notice he's not smiling. He's just looking at me. I didn't do a promo, I respond. In the ring, did you drop an F word or something? He asks again. Leaning in, loud music and pyro going off around us. I don't think so. Maybe what? I am confused. I just won the United States Championship from Kofi Kingston. I hit him with a headlock driver I stole from Sami Callihan and scored my first WWE belt to a big reaction. When I first started doing that move, it looked devastating because I was doing it to guys like Kofi and RVD who could take a spike bump on top of their heads, making it look like they were dead. But it was hard to make it look good with bigger, taller guys, so I would eventually scrap it for the double-arm DDT. I wouldn't bust it out again until years later in the G1 against Tetsuya Naito. To explain the move, I just showed Naito a clip of Kofi taking it. Right now, I'm about to go out and celebrate with Seth and Roman. They were in the ring with Kane and Bryan and about to score the tag belts. Road Dogg just walked on, but the look on his face gave me an indication that I was in trouble. But for what? Huh? I went out to celebrate with my teammates. We are commanding championships now. A logical next step. It's pretty cool to win a belt in WWE. It was another first for us. We were in a pretty good mood as we rode on to Kansas City. The celebration would be over by the time we got to our hotel. We'd grab a few hours sleep and be in the gym the next morning. Always a CrossFit gym in those days. Seth loves CrossFit. I don't need all the acronyms, but I like a sweaty garage gym and weights, so it was cool with me. We were working our asses off. The siege of WWE continued. The next night, we would cut our first in-ring promo on live TV, but that's a whole nother fucking story. We'll see if I have time for it. I'm getting close to my deadline. I didn't think much about my interaction with Road Dogg. Might as well. Here's all the story is. They gave us the 3-page script, paragraph after paragraph of words. Roman paragraph, Seth paragraph, Dean paragraph. None of it made a goddamn bit of sense. We spent all fucking day memorizing these lines, going over it over and over and over again. We went out there in the ring and delivered that sumbitch verbatim, exactly as we'd been instructed to. So afterward is all high fives and congratulations. Yet another new challenge. We stepped up to the plate and knocked it out of the park. About an hour later, I had a strange, empty feeling. Something felt a little off. After the adrenaline of the live TV wore off, and with the stress of having to memorize every single note of Beethoven's Piano Sonata number 14 in C-sharp minor lifted, we sat in the car getting ready to drive to the next town, and I asked my partners, what the fuck did we even say? FCW. Florida Championship Wrestling was a WWE developmental territory. I signed there in May 2011 for the minimum, $600 a week. I'd had some buzz on the indies in the past year, but I showed up there with little fanfare. I later learned that Joey Mercury, one of their trainers, basically told the talent relations, we need him. So they decided to give me a shot. Joey would become something of a mentor to me during my time in Florida. This opportunity was coming out of the blue, and I decided I was going for broke. I'd watched WWE programming from time to time, and I reasoned I could talk as well as anyone there. And with nothing to worry about but training full-time, I could forge myself into the best version of me I'd ever been. I was not going to blow this. I was nervous to go to Pittsburgh for the standard medical evaluation. I'd been taking bigger and bigger risks with my body, sliding farther down the slippery slope of death matches. I was afraid I'd get to Pittsburgh and find out I had injuries I didn't know about that would disqualify me. I thought of HWA alumni Nigel McGuinness, who signed with WWE only to have his contract rescinded after his trip to Pittsburgh. And what about this drug test? I drank gallons and gallons of water to flush out any traces of any substance that could be lingering in my system. The result came in the mail, and I stared at that envelope for a good while. I said a final prayer. Hallelujah! Clean bill of health. I also committed to a conscious decision not to change for anybody. They hired Jon fucking Moxley, and that's what they were going to get. I knew I'd have to adjust my style to a degree. Obviously, there would be no bleeding, swearing, or skill saws to the face, but I was not going there to be anyone other than me. I'd heard whispers about how I'd be down there for a few months and end up back in CZW, how I'd never adjust to family-friendly sports entertainment. Not only did I succeed at molding myself into a successful WWE product, but in later years I would actually become a little too kid-friendly. All that was left was to get to Tampa from Philly, where I was staying with my boy Devin Moore and sleeping on a floor. WWE sent me a moving bonus, $1,200. I signed the check over to Dev's girlfriend Mag so she could cash it using her bank account. I didn't even have one. I loaded my wrestling bag into the Love Machine, my beater car I bought from my buddy Buffalo for $200. I threw in a few books and the rest of my meager possessions, stuffed that giant wad of cash in my pocket, and headed south. I drove nonstop. When I arrived in Tampa, I'd been up all night, and the Florida sun burned my eyes. Because of a prior eviction on my record, I was unsuccessful in securing an apartment. They offered to set me up with a roommate, but I was too proud and antisocial to take them up on it. I searched Craigslist for a room and found one that looked nice for $100 a week in cash. It would turn out to not be nice. Like, not at all. In the slightest. I finally arrived at the property manager's address and followed him over to check out my accommodations. My house, where 6 other rooms were occupied by some unsavory-looking individuals, looked decent enough from the outside. I followed the guy around back to discover an unkempt backyard with weeds sprouting everywhere, garbage, paint cans, old car parts, and a washing machine from the Great Depression. This was not a good sign. He opened the door to a small rectangular room that was tiny, maybe 3 or 4 feet wide and 10-ish feet long, with a rickety dresser and a creepy-looking bed. There was no mistaking this was basically a crack den. But I was exhausted and I didn't have any other options. At least the FCW building was only a mile away. When he asked me what I thought, I said, I'll take it. The next morning, I had to report for my first day on the journey to taking over WWE. My only original goal was to make enough money to pay off my mom's house. If I did that, I would consider myself a success. I walked across the street to a strange-looking building that sold used appliances and bought a small TV for $25 from a man who was also selling oranges. I walked it back across the street, put it on a milk crate, and plugged it in. I had cable, at least. I was proud of that TV. I woke up early, went across to McDonald's and got a coffee, then stood at my open door, sipping it and smoking a cigarette. I looked out over my new Mad Max backyard as the sun rose, excitement and nerves welling up inside me. The road ahead was not clear. I showed up at the FCW building and was led into an office where I met Dr. Tom Pritchard and Norman Smiley. They would become two of my favorite people I've ever met. There were a lot of big dudes there, bodybuilder types, football player types. Seth Rollins arrived looking sleepy. Seth and Xavier Woods were the only two guys I'd ever met before. I'd met Seth at an Ian Rotten show in Peoria, Illinois, where I was drinking a beer in the ring truck. I'd once shared an Egg McMuffin with Woods, who I still call Creed, at the Orlando airport after an unsuccessful TNA tryout. I knew they were both good workers, so I gravitated toward them that first morning. I asked them questions, and they filled me in on the day-to-day of life and developmental. We began with our daily stretching routine, which was always painful, mostly because it was so boring. We stretched cold muscles at 9 a.m. while we counted off numbers for what seemed like an eternity. Then, still stiff and cold, we would begin our morning meeting. We discussed new business, the upcoming schedule, whatever. Sometimes our Raw reports would be read aloud after we turned them in. These meetings were where Dr. Tom shined. His goal was to make this meeting last as long as possible. Filibustering, as he would call it. Easily filling an hour or so if he chose. He'd sometimes tell stories, or he'd lead discussions, or he'd just yell and scream about anything that was on his mind. A master promo. On one's first day, it was customary for Doc to bring the new person up to the front of the class to introduce themselves. Doc would ask you to tell a joke. I had been warned of this tradition, so when I got up in front of everyone, I was prepared. "So you got a joke?" Doc asked. I hit the audience with the following gem. "How'd the computer get so fat?" "He downloaded too many cookies." Crickets. A complete swing and a miss. Maybe not complete. One person laughed. Derek Bateman, EC3, who would go on to become one of my first friends in Tampa. Raw and SmackDown were filmed in Tampa and Orlando that week, so it just so happened that on my third day, a bunch of the office were there. The creative team, writers, Michael P.S. Hayes, and Hunter. So was his lordship, William Regal. We gathered in the FCW arena that morning. In the part of the building, it was a little studio where we filmed TV. All the wrestlers sat where the crowd would sit. They put a big table at the front of the room where all the WWE main roster luminaries sat like an episode of America's Got Talent. There was a wrestling card with all the top prospects at FCW who were trying to impress the bigwigs. The rest of us played along as a mock crowd. I found the whole thing very bizarre. The wrestlers came out to their music, in their gear, oiled up, hair greased, full elaborate entrances. They proceeded to have mock matches, hitting all their best shit. It was pretty weird, but it did give me something of a look at the competition. After all, there were only so many spots. I saw a lot of great talents perform that morning in an attempt to impress their bosses and hopefully earn a main roster spot. But FCW didn't have anything quite like me. After the matches, it was time to talk. There was a litany of promos, some good, some heinous. Some guys volunteered, got in the ring and gave it their best shots. Some debuted new wacky characters they devised. Some were called up unprepared and floundered. I was sitting in the back row keeping to myself, head low. I wasn't looking for any action that day. I didn't think anyone really knew who I was, so I wasn't too worried about getting called up. I was a wolf, hiding in the brush, just surveying the scene. Maybe a mountain lion is a better analogy. Mountain lions terrify me. Then, suddenly, I was the one being stalked. I felt William Regal's eyes on me, heating up my insides like laser beams. Adrenaline started to pump. I fidgeted in my chair. I knew what was coming. Regal was going to call me up. I'd be foolish not to be prepared, so throughout this laborious and awkward developmental showcase, I'd been toying with something in the back of my head. An introductory promo. A Jon fucking Moxley promo. Now I knew it was coming any minute, and I was ready. Maybe even a little cocky. I was very confident in my verbal abilities at the time. By the end of my run in FCW, I believed I was as good on the mic as anyone in the world. Whether that was true or not didn't matter. I felt it. When Regal had a moment to get the table's attention, I could see him motioning in my general direction. He nodded his head, looked my way, and called my name in a way that suggested he was excited to show something off to his colleagues. I coolly got up and walked into the ring, grabbed the mic, and laced into a tirade introducing myself to the WWE at large. It might have been a story, an anecdote, a haiku, a limerick, I have no idea. I don't remember a single word I said, but the response I got after this whole fucking strange event was over couldn't have been more positive. I had knocked it out of the park. And thanks to Regal, I was given an important chance to make a good impression of the higher-ups and stand out. For some reason, after it was over, Michael Hayes cut a very aggressive promo yelling at everyone. I think he was trying to inspire passion in us, but I was just like, dude, why are you screaming? I just took it all in. The next day after practice, Dr. Tom got a call from the office and told me I was to start training with Rob McIntyre, the strength and conditioning coach, that afternoon. This was a good sign because normally you have to earn that privilege over a few months. I was being fast-tracked. I never talked with Hunter that first day, but the next time he came down a month later, he brought me in for a meeting in the office. I could tell he was trying to read me. I was grateful for this opportunity and ready to work my ass off, but I wasn't about to be a suck-ass. I told him it was going great, asked some questions, gave some of my opinions about how I saw wrestling, where I thought it was going, what I hoped to accomplish. He seemed to listen intently. We were feeling each other out. He told me I was doing great and that I should just keep doing what I was doing and that they saw big potential in me. Off to a good start. I was pretty pumped. The next step was the debut on FCW television. Dusty Rhodes was the creative vision, and I loved Dusty, as did everyone. I loved just chilling in his office, listening to his stories, and waxing creative. He said he wanted Seth Rollins versus the newly minted Dean Ambrose to be his version of Pacquiao Mayweather. Dean Ambrose is the name Dusty came up with himself. Dean. James Dean. Ambrose? Dean Ambrose is strong, baby, Dusty said. Good enough for me. Dean Ambrose was born, although it was a little awkward using a new name at first. Seth and I would begin working the house shows immediately, off-Broadway, to build our chemistry. My first match was Seth, who'd come to be synonymous with me as a partner and one of my greatest opponents, was in Largo, Florida, in front of fewer than 50 people, and that's being generous. We never worked together before, and it was something of an indie dream match. He was ROH champion while I was CZW champ, two diametrically opposed promotions, and we would now meet on neutral ground. At this time, Seth was getting a little frustrated in FCW. He wasn't quite having the matches he wanted with the type of opponents he'd been given. I understood completely. We put together a 15-minute match. The FCW Jack Briscoe 15 Championship medal was on the line, a medal defended solely in 15-minute Iron Man matches. We clicked instantly. Everything was tight, smooth, right in the pocket. We complemented each other perfectly in style and character. It was a perfect marriage, and we'd be married for a long time. I debuted on television with a promo announcing my arrival and intent to go after Seth Rollins. We built an angle culminating in a 15-minute Iron Man match for the gold. By the time we got there, we'd perfected our routines, our timing, and our high spots. There was anticipation in the air around FCW as our matches in the house shows were routinely tearing up the very small houses. A few main roster talents from Tampa came down to watch the match, giving us an extra boost of motivation. Watch this, you superstar motherfuckers. Adding more gravity to the moment was that we were taping multiple episodes in one night. We wrestle to a 15-minute draw in the Tampa humidity, then come back out shortly thereafter with 5 extra minutes and go to a 20-minute draw. The match just couldn't have gone better. We tore it up for 15 minutes with the crowd on the edge of their seats, and by the time we crashed and burned off the stage to end the 20-minute draw, we knew we'd done something special. The real money was still to come. Well, not really money, but it was magical. The biggest match in FCW history, Dusty's Pacquiao-Mayweather, a 30-minute Iron Man match. There was definitely a buzz that day, and the small building was about as full as it could be. I got myself DQ'd intentionally to give away a fall, but then scored 2 in a row on the prone Seth. Seth made a comeback as we pulled out all the stops. With 8 seconds to go, Seth's foot struck my face with his patented finishing kick in the mouth. I kicked out. The crowd was stunned. 65 minutes of wrestling with no winner? The GM, Maxine, declared that there must be a winner and announced sudden death overtime. We sped into overdrive for the next few minutes. My adrenaline was so high I could have gone another 30. I felt no fatigue, just pure joy at what we were experiencing. It was pandemonium in the building. Finally, Seth debuted as small package driver to score the pin. We both knew we had done something special. We were made men, at least in our little developmental bubble. I would next move on to a feud with Regal himself, but more on that later because this chapter's already getting long. I remember the FCW Summer Slamorama. I can still hear the voice of Ryan Nemeth, who emceed those shows. Welcome to Summer Slamorama! We drove all over Florida, piled into cars, hit every little town there was, wrestling in sweltering armories. Sometimes there were 25 people, sometimes there were several hundred. I made a lot of great memories that summer, driving up and down the Sunshine State's highways, getting caught in summer Florida rainstorms with Seth, Juice, and Corey Graves. Eventually, Big Cass needed a roommate. He'd been staying with someone who got fired. I'd been in my crack den for a full year at that point, embarrassed to let any of the boys see where I lived. The high point of my stay in the house came late one night when I heard a commotion in the living room. I walked out to see one of my roomies wielding a kitchen knife at 2 other residents. I took 2 inquisitive steps toward the scene when a cop burst in and tackled the offender. I returned to my room and put my headphones on. I jumped at the chance to live in an actual apartment. Spin it up. Lana Del Rey, Ultraviolent, 2014. What a fucking voice. I'm a big Lana Del Rey fan. She's a pure talent. A beautiful woman as well. I suspect she'd be a challenging woman to date, the kind of chick who might set all your clothes ablaze in a dumpster fire at the drop of a hat. Renee lived in Queens, an apartment in Astoria, when we first started dating. And we'd often spend our off days there. She introduced me to Del Rey's 2012 record, Born to Die, which we used to listen to amidst the backdrop of beautiful New York City. Born to Die is kind of set in NYC, and anytime I hear a track from it, I'm transported back to that time and place. My favorite Lana album, however, is Ultraviolence, not just because of my affinity for barbed wire. This album is different from Born to Die in that its setting is the West Coast, as embodied by the track West Coast, obviously. Brooklyn Baby, a great song, might be the exception here, but this album feels distinctly West Coast to me, whatever that means. There's also a song called Florida Kilos, so maybe my whole theory is off base. Seriously, why are you listening to this book? I clearly don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I first listened to this album while shooting a movie in Vancouver, and when I hear it now, it always takes me back to that time and place. Walking along the water with Renee, hiking the Grouse Grind and having a beer at the mountaintop, getting some Jappa Dog, amazing Asian fusion hot dog carts. If you ever see one, stop. Sit on your porch with some sangria, light some candles, and take a bath with a glass of wine, or take a nice walk through the park while you listen to the first 5 tracks of Ultraviolence. Let me know how you feel afterward. For me, this album is relaxing and inspiring. I mean, I don't light candles or drink wine, but I am all about an Epsom salt bath. Hey, get fucked. It's a legitimate therapy tool. It's not like I use bubble bath and shit. The greatest 3-man lucha square dance of all time. I quickly made friends with Cass. We'd drink beers and talk wrestling. He was pretty new to the business, and he'd ask me for advice. Cass had some well-publicized problems in later years, but he's doing well and staying healthy now. I just talked to him the other day. He's still a sweet kid at heart. Our apartment became kind of the official hangout/staging area for pre-gaming before group outings to the infamous South Howard Street. We pretty much went out every night back then, and by we, I mean at least half the locker room. I would be determined to stay in. Nah, I'm just gonna chill tonight. But inevitably someone would show up at our place around 10, and 2 more people, and so on. Fine, I'll just come out for a little bit, then I'm bailing. Next thing I know, I'm running to the gas station from McDenton's to buy more beer before the cutoff time so we can keep the party alive back at our place. One time, Trent Beretta pulled the fire alarm in that bar because it was a very Trent thing to do. We liked this place called the Dubliner that had a nice patio and this delicious blueberry draft beer with actual blueberries floating in it. One time at a country bar over by where those good-for-nothing Wyndham boys lived, Trent, Bo, and I did the greatest 3-man lucha square dance of all time. FCW could be a frustrating time, having to be at practice every day at the small crowds, feeling like you were on an island, and you just want to hurry up and get to the big show. I spent a great deal of time feeling that way, the fear of not getting called up, that this might be all for nothing. Now I look back on FCW as one of the most fun times of my life. I made a ton of friends, forged some real bonds, and I learned a lot, specifically how to work for television, taking into account replays, facials, camera switches, slowing down the beats, all invaluable things to know. Now I mostly only remember the good times, the laughs and the great stories, many of which I can't include here so as not to incriminate anyone. I will always be grateful for my time at FCW. It set me up for success. Flick Pick, Major League, 1989. This was my favorite movie as a kid. A hilarious feel-good classic. I watched this VHS so many times, I have the whole thing pretty much memorized. I could perform this movie as a one-man show on Broadway. Wild Thing, Ricky Vaughn, what a great name. Charlie Sheen walking to the mound in the 9th inning to the strains of Wild Thing was probably what inspired me to try Little League. Boy, was that a poor idea. I was terrible at baseball. It's just not my sport. I have the hand-eye coordination of Hans Moleman. I would swing wildly at the ball like I was trying to whack a bee out of the air. I spent a lot of time riding the pine. Definitely not as cool as Jake Taylor or Willie Mays Hayes. I wouldn't call myself a baseball fan nowadays. You couldn't pay me to sit and watch a game. But I will always watch Major League. Coincidentally, months after I wrote this, Tony has me coming out to Wild Thing. Maybe Eddie and I can do a 6-man tag with Charlie Sheen. True Villains. One of my favorite pieces of work, which also took place at FCW, was a slow-burning feud that lasted almost a year with Lord Regal himself. The chance to work with Regal, one of my biggest supporters and a true legend, was a huge opportunity for me. I appreciate him endlessly for wanting to do it. Best of all, this was not just a one-off, but a full-blown, long-term story we could both sink our teeth into. Regal was born in Blackpool, England, and had wrestled all over Europe and Japan, developing a hard-nosed, technical style before becoming a star in WCW and WWE. Some of his most memorable stuff was when he was WWE Commissioner in the early 2000s. His comedic timing and delivery were classic. But there were to be no laughs or sight gags here. The first act would be a story about pain and punishment. The second about one man hunting the other man down to the ends of the earth for revenge that both men knew would inevitably come. The final act would be tragic. Regal was an announcer on FCW TV, and he went out of his way to compliment me on my attitude in the ring. That's exactly what we need more of here. Not only did we have no issue, he was a fan. We began in earnest one night when there was something of a locker room clearing melee in the ring. I ambled out to see what all the commotion was about. Maxine, the GM, was knocked down and possibly hurt in the ring. Regal had left the announce table to tend to her as the ring cleared. I lingered, went to step through the ropes and looked back. Went to leave again, paused, and looked back again. Then I rushed Regal and knocked him over with a body check and started pummeling him, seemingly for no reason. Just because I spotted the opportunity, like it wasn't planned. When the fight was stopped, the camera panned to a shot of Maxine with a devilish grin, all but signaling the match was made. Regal versus Ambrose. He worked mostly backstage with talent at this point, so having Regal actually wrestle on FCW was a big deal. I explained myself in a promo, painting the picture. I just wanted to poke the hornet's nest, fly close to the flame. Fuck it, just 'cause. It was too much to resist. Next, Regal would cut a stylized backstage promo. He was really into it. He knew what he wanted to do. A chance to do something serious and violent and thought-provoking. He said, "It's very strange when it comes to oneself. Look at this. A drop. A tear. Believe me, it's not through sorrow. It's actually a tear of joy. I've got so complacent with myself for the last few years. I'm everybody's Mr. Entertainment, Mr. Go-To guy. There's a reason that I like Dean Ambrose so much, and that is because I see a kindred spirit. I see a man that I would drag somebody I didn't like outside into a car park and set fire to them. Everybody else here in FCW would run away. I know Dean Ambrose. He'd come and stand next to me and warm his hands on the bloody flames. That's why I like Dean Ambrose. Now, I'm indebted to him. I've got a mind that just works as a villain. True villains can't pretend to be anything else. They are what they are." We were all set to go. Regal was confident, a veteran ready to teach an impetuous young lion a lesson. I was confident in the sense that I didn't give a fuck. Let's just see what happens. It might get wild, but I better take this old timer out. The match was simple. Regal beat the hell out of me. He mercilessly pummeled me, beat me pillar to post, as they say. I took a cool, nasty-looking bump on the apron, injuring my arm. He did creative stuff like trapping my hand in the bottom turnbuckle, sticking my arm in between the steel steps and kicking me. He destroyed my arm and beat the hell out of me for most of the match. I got humbled. Regal let me know that I got too ambitious too soon, and he punished me for it. He would go back to the announcing booth, and I would pick myself up and dust myself off. I popped my shoulder back into place and got back to the drawing board, but it wasn't over. I did learn a lesson. Next time it would be different. Wherever, whenever this match happened again, and I'd make sure it did, I would redeem myself. Regal would go back to the announce desk and commentate on my matches. During this time, I was improving in my FCW training every day. Every time I'd wrestle, I'd give Regal a death stare, signifying that this wasn't over. He never sold it. Eventually, I'd start cutting promos calling Regal out. This lasted for months. No matter whatever else I had going on, I'd make sure to keep throwing gas on the fire of a potential rematch. I was getting better every day, and I let him know it. He knew I was coming for him. On the commentary, he made it clear in the most casual of ways that he knew one day I'd be the man to take him out. But he betrayed no emotion. All class. He continued to ignore me, which made me grow more incensed and made my verbal attacks more pointed. I did not like being ignored. As far as I was concerned, months and months of improving and climbing the ranks of FCW earned me this rematch. In my mind, it was the only match I wanted. I almost won the FCW title, but my shoulder failed me. The same shoulder Regal had chewed up like a hyena months earlier. He'd taken something else from me now. No matter what, I wouldn't let him deny me a rematch. I'm here to take what's mine, and I want my fucking rematch and my revenge. I fucking earned it! Despite attacking him for no reason, we had bonded over our love of violence and chaos. I'd started to look at him as a father figure. And he was fucking ignoring me. And now he would not give me any credit for working my way back to a rematch. This grew animosity, not hatred. Deep down, I wanted Regal's approval, and there was clearly only one way to get it now. To destroy him. He finally told me, "Good things come to those who wait." Eventually, he began to stare right back at me when I stared down at the table. I cornered my prey in ever-tightening concentric circles. The time had come. The rematch. FCW were moving operations to Orlando, so this would be the final episode of FCW television. We were the main event. Dusty and the GOAT Jim Ross were on commentary, which was very cool for me. JR was the voice of so much of my childhood, so it was surreal having him call a match I was actually in. I came to the ring with focused intensity, different from last time. I had a dope leather jacket. During my entrance, Dusty compared me to James Dean. And I felt about that cool, although I nearly wrecked it by almost tripping as I entered the ring, but I covered it up rather nicely. I had worked myself up all afternoon to achieve the right mindset. By the time I got to the ring, I actually hated and was going to kill Regal. This was real to me at this point. I had my headphones on all afternoon pacing. I was an animal to be unchained when the bell rang. Regal, the veteran outlaw, as JR described him brilliantly, entered stoically. This match would unfold as the inverse of the last. At the outset, Regal went after my arm, out-wrestling me with his technical but vicious English style. This time I would survive the early onslaught and send Regal's head flying into the ring post. It fucked him up. His eyes were glassy, his equilibrium off kilter. A busted eardrum, maybe? He expertly sold that he couldn't walk or stand straight. I proceeded to beat the fuck out of him. I had his head trapped in the same turnbuckle where he'd once trapped my hand, but the turnbuckle pad was exposed. I slammed my knee into his face multiple times. His questionable ear cheese grated on the steel. It began to bleed. Now, I was always supposed to go over, destroying my mentor. Problem was, if I destroyed him, I would never get the approval I was seeking from my mentor. I would be victorious but unsatisfied. What happened instead was even more beautiful. Blood was a no-no. That stupid WWE bullshit where they would stop a match and the ref puts on rubber gloves in the middle of a match for a fucking paper cut on live TV. Bill DeMott had just taken over as head coach, replacing Doc, which was a wildly unpopular decision with the boys. He was on headset. When Regal's ear started bleeding, the trainer jumped in to check on him. I'm pacing like a tiger, seething. Do not stop this fucking match. But DeMott made the call. Stop the match. He jumped right out of the trainer's arms, Dusty exclaimed as Regal leapt from a kneeling position, blasting through the trainers and refs to drill me with a hard forearm. Now we were both down. The ref told us to get to a finish. Something, anything. In all the chaos and confusion, we ended up in the penultimate moment where Regal was bloody, beaten, helpless, with just enough strength to clap his hands, point at me, and signal for me to put the nail in his coffin, as he always knew I would. He lowered his defenses, and I hit him with his own knee trembler to the face. I had stolen it from him out of disrespect in recent months. I leveled him into a motionless heap. Instead of going for the pin, I paced around in frustration and anger, continuing the assault on his carcass. The whole locker room emptied to pull me off of him. The match was stopped. There was never an official winner, but it was an even more beautiful and tragic finish because of it. I'd set out to destroy him, and I did, but I never got my victory, nor my validation. I was so in the fucking zone at the time, I was furious. A little bit of blood put an abrupt end to the match we've been building for so long. I wanted to punch DeMott badly right in his face for taking such liberties on the headset. I stormed to the back, made a quick right turn, and blew through the doors to the parking lot to cool down. Joey came out to console me. All smiles. It couldn't have worked out any better, he said. I calmed down quickly. Regal, who I just now call Lordship, has often told me this was one of his favorite things he's ever done. That means a lot to me. We were kindred spirits. This was a local little wrestling TV show, but the final episode of FCW television went off the air with some Shakespearean shit. Flick pick. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 1990. The OG. This movie still holds up. I assume everyone my age loved Ninja Turtles when they were a kid. I loved the cartoon. I still have the song memorized. But I'm not going to sing all the lyrics here because I got nothing to prove to you. And you might just assume my editor looked them up anyway. You probably know the lyrics too, and now you know that makes two of us. TMNT in the 90s was a marketing powerhouse. They made a bunch of stupid toys. I remember seeing some of them at the store where Donatello was a basketball player. He's like 5 feet tall. I guess he could have been a John Stockton type. But the pick and roll wouldn't have worked because none of the other turtles were tall either. They would have needed that giant robot body with Krang in his stomach to play power forward. And by that point, I think there would have been just too much animosity for them to gel as a team. This book sucks. The kids' cartoon and toys aside, this movie has some edge to it. Seedy, crime-ridden New York City. Raphael with a damn! This movie was popular with kids, but stayed true to the original comic, which was the darkest version of TMNT. The music is good. Shredder is terrifying. I could feel the sexual tension between Casey Jones and April O'Neil before I even knew what that was. All the fight scenes are classic, and of course my favorite line, "Ninja kick the damn rabbit!" Many times when the Shield was getting their asses kicked by the bad guys, I'd crawl over to one of my partners and say, "At what point did we lose control here?" Just to pop myself. There have been many other versions of TMNT over the years, but I can't get behind any of them. Fuck Michael Bay. Still, I will completely flip-flop my stance on that if there's another remake, because if the director has any sense, they'll cast me as Casey Jones. Pizza Dude's got 30 seconds. Brodie Lee. Brodie died today. Details are still sketchy. All we've known for the last 6 or 7 weeks is that he was in the hospital on life support and might need a lung transplant. Today's December 26th. I can't imagine what kind of Christmas it was for Amanda and the rest of his family. I'm numb at this point. It doesn't feel real. I've yet to shed a tear, but I know they're coming. This whole time, my brain hasn't been able to wrap itself around the situation. I'm at a loss, and I've just been praying constantly. Renee has kept in touch with Amanda through this. Every time we talk about it, all I can say is, let's just keep praying and waiting for good news. What else can you do? Amanda told Renee that when Brodie found out she was pregnant, he smiled, which was a good sign, as much emotion as he'd been able to show in a long time. By the time this book comes out, every nice thing to be said about Jonathan Huber will have been. Brodie, a fellow Jonathan, but he'll always be Brodie to me, was one of the best people in the business, one of the best people I knew. Cliche as it sounds, you'll never find anyone who had a bad word to say about him. He'd been my friend for over a decade and one of my favorite and most frequent opponents. On the Indies and the Shield Wyatt Wars, and ultimately in AEW where we wrestled our final match on pay-per-view for the World Championship. He was brought into FCW for a tryout several months after I got there. Since we were friends and had wrestled each other many times before, Joey Mercury asked me if I would work a match with him to be filmed and sent to the office. I obliged without hesitation, of course, but this was a lot of pressure. All of this man's hopes and dreams, his family's future were riding on this. I had to make him look like $1 million. I took his boss man slam so good it looked like a tornado tore through the gym. I bumped my ass off and took a hell of a beating. Brodie got hired. I never let him forget he'd be substitute teaching at Rochester, if not for me selling it like I was Jamie Lee Curtis to make him look like Michael Myers in his tryout. We joked about that often, but of course, Brodie was hired because of his exceptional talent. He was an athletic big man who could work circles around almost anybody. Brodie's upside was can't miss. He ended up opposite me and the Wyatt family. As I was part of the Shield, we are on opposite sides of the demarcation line that divided the SWAT dudes from the swamp dudes. I can't begin to count how many matches we had on TV, pay-per-view, and at live events in every town you can think of all across the U.S. Sometimes on long, grueling European tours, we do lucha spots just to pop the boys at the monitor. We shared the closest thing I'd have to a WrestleMania moment in a multi-man ladder match. I figured the best way to make the highlight reel was to nearly kill myself with a death-defying bump. We devised a spot where he would powerbomb me from the ring through a steel ladder to the floor. Falling backward at such an angle was an extremely high-risk bump. I said at the time, and have always maintained, that I wouldn't have trusted anybody else on the planet with that spot but Brodie. I literally put my life into his hands. Jesus and Brodie take the wheel. A couple of staples in my head, but I walked away unscathed, thanks to my friend's guiding hands. Vince freaked the fuck out in Gorilla. He thought I was dead. It was a gnarly bump, and we made the highlight reel. When Brodie got his release from WWE, I was texting with him from Sapporo. I gave him the lay of the land from my experience so far outside the WWE bubble. I was excited that he was coming to AEW, if for no other reason than to just have him around again, to laugh, to joke, to tell stories. I was always on the same wavelength as Brodie. Like me, he was a big MMA fan, and I'd always hunt him down to discuss the latest fights. An opportunity opened up for him to jump in and wrestle me at Double or Nothing on pay-per-view on a few weeks' notice. When Tony suggested Brodie, I said, hell yeah, I can wrestle him in my sleep. I was so happy he'd get to show the world what he could do in a main event spot. Tony, Brodie, and I had a three-way phone call and mapped out a 3-week angle that had Brodie and the Dark Order stealing the championship belt. He took it home, and Amanda sent Renee a video of his son, little Brodie, proudly holding it while cutting a hellacious promo on me. We were on the same wavelength. Our vision for the match was a 12 to 15 minute hailstorm of violence. Brodie had the idea of crashing through the stage. I won with a choke. The match was the embodiment of what I wanted my style to be. A mixture of wild violence and pure wrestling. An in-your-face thrash metal sprint. I'm eternally grateful to Brodie for creating and sharing that night with me. I think it was our best match. The year 2020 has hit everyone hard, but this is particularly tough to swallow. I feel sick. I miss him every time I'm in a locker room. I had an idea tucked away in the back of my mind to make a run at the tag belts with Brodie as a Shield Wyatt super team. We'll have to save that one for the next life. Yesterday was Christmas Day, and as for many people, it was a little different for us due to the pandemic. Just me and Renee at home this year, so we decided to go on a Christmas morning hike in Red Rock Canyon. At the end of the Calico Tanks Trail, I looked up on the ridge and spotted a bighorn sheep. I'm always on the lookout for him. I've seen him in Utah and Valley of Fire, but never in Red Rock. It came down the side of the cliff, passed by us, and went back up the other side of the canyon in less than a minute. It felt like a Christmas gift, maybe a sign. Maybe a sign to keep your eyes open and enjoy the beauty around you while it's here. Enjoy people and love people while they're here. Maybe a sign that 2021 will be better for everyone. I don't know what it meant, if anything, but I'll remember that sheep. Brodie, it was a pleasure to share the ring with you and an honor to be your friend. I love you. P.S. If you see Grant up there and tell him I said what's up, he'll be at the bar. Joke Claudio told me. Lance is not that popular a name anymore, but in the Middle Ages, people were named Lance a lot. December 31st, 2020. It's New Year's Eve. I'm typing at the kitchen counter. Renee is making a mocktail, something called a sparkling pomegranate punch, and stealing potato chips from my bowl. She's pregnant and can't drink. Also, this pesky pandemic is still going on, so it's likely to be the most tame New Year's I've had in recent memory. We were both born on East Coast time, so that's our excuse to do our countdown to midnight at 9 p.m. We'll be in bed by 11. Lame, I know. I'm drinking a Heineken Zero, for Christ's sake. A far cry from 1 year ago when we were at the AEW New Year's Eve party in Jacksonville taking full advantage of the open bar. But life has changed even more dramatically from where we sat exactly 2 years ago. Sandwiches. I consider myself a connoisseur of sandwiches, one of life's great simple pleasures. Sandwiches are a delicious, pragmatic, and beautiful thing when the artist truly understands the complexities of the sandwiching medium. I can't cook, at all. I have no desire to or need to be around a stove, oven, or broiler. After all, I have the Postmates app and I married a chick who wrote a cookbook. I do, however, have a passion for the art of the perfect sandwich. If you're going to do something, do it right. Les Thatcher always said, train hard and master your craft. Well, I've spent many years on mine and chomped through countless BLTs, turkey clubs, pastrami on rides, and bologna sandwiches to perfect my system. When I see an outlaw mud show sandwich haphazardly thrown together, I feel the way Les would while watching backyard wrestling. I take this shit seriously. Maybe too seriously. Case in point. We sat down at the restaurant of a pretty nice hotel a few weeks ago, and I ordered what they called a pretzel club. The ingredients individually were all great. Toasted pretzel bun, grilled turkey, spectacular perfectly cooked bacon, avocado, and bib lettuce. Although generally I don't give a shit about lettuce. I mean, what am I, a rabbit? I picked the thing up to take a bite, and I could feel that the integrity of the sandwich was lacking. A house of cards. I opened my mouth wide to take the first bite, and as I bit down, I immediately felt avocado bursting out the back, dragging precious bacon and turkey with it. My thumbs and forefingers were now pinching down on each other. I let go of one hand and palmed the sandwich like an overfilled water balloon. I had to put the whole thing down and eat all the ingredients individually like a savage. Delicious as the individual components were, this sandwich was worth much less than the sum of its parts, poorly conceived, planned, and executed. There are 4 key points to consider when executing a perfect sandwich. 4 pillars, if you will. They are as follows. Bread, ingredients, balance, entry point. Bread is the first pillar because it literally holds the sandwich together. What type of bread is this? Rye, sourdough, a bagel? Is this bread sliced, grilled? You gotta know what you're working with. For example, say I'm working with one of my favorites, Wonder Bread. It's a classic, but very light with a small surface area. If you start thinking about saucy meatballs or sloppy joes, you're going to be in trouble. But slap on a piece of crunchy lettuce, 2 strips of bacon, 1 slice of tomato, salt and pepper, and you're in business. If you do want to push the boundaries of a basic slice of white bread's integrity, you can toast it. This will stiffen it up and it'll hold stronger. See what I mean? You gotta be thinking ahead. Your ingredients largely provide the sandwich's identity. They are, after all, the items being sandwiched. What'd you have? Turkey sandwich, cold cut trio. This is the fun part, where your creativity can shine. Starting with pastrami. Okay, you put mustard on that, pickles, going bologna. You gonna fry that shit or no? PB&J? What else you gonna put on that? Honey, banana, Reese's Pieces? See, there are no rules. You let your imagination run wild. One of my favorites is a chipwich. Wonder Bread, handful of potato or tortilla chips, Miracle Whip. Done. You can use any chips you want. Cool Ranch Doritos are one of my favorites, but when I can get them from Canada, sour cream and bacon ruffles are the best. I don't toast the bread because it should be soft and sticky to counterbalance the crunch of the chips and keep them in place. See? Thinking ahead. Another life hack involving Canadian snacks is topping an original Chick-fil-A sandwich with ketchup chips. You may have noticed, I said Miracle Whip. That's right. I understand most people prefer mayo and that's fine, but don't you dare call Miracle Whip and its tangy zip gross. I don't like raw onions, garlic, or truffle oil, but I respect your right to enjoy these things. You do you and I'll do me. Live and let live. Sandwich and let sandwich. You might have noticed I don't classify the main ingredients like turkey or pastrami separately from sauces or toppings. To me, it's all one living organism. The elements work together like a symphony, which brings us to balance. The first mistake the aforementioned Pretzel Club made was an imbalance of ingredients. It was overloaded on avocado. Avocados are fine and all, healthy fats or whatever, but on its own, gooey and tasteless. They went to the trouble of cooking this incredible bacon and then smothered it in wet slop. Had they spread a much lighter layer of avocado on the bread with a knife, they could have kept the sandwich together. But what they did caused flood damage. Turkey and bacon swept away, left covered in muck, all consistency destroyed. The first bite of a sandwich should strike a perfect harmonious balance of all the ingredients, and the sandwich should maintain its structure, leading me to their second mistake and this crucial pillar that's all too often overlooked. Entry point. The Pretzel Club that you're now very familiar with was large, packed to the gills, and in one round piece, no corners, no edges, no point of attack. The eater had no choice but to create a bite vacuum, the phenomenon that sucks the pieces of bread toward each other, creating a black hole where matter collapses upon itself and pushes ingredients outward in an explosion. What they should have done was cut the Pretzel Club in half, creating 4 entry points on which to seize in a balanced bite attack. To be fair, this is often a problem with breakfast sandwiches on bagels. When Great American Bagel in the Vegas airport doesn't cut my ham, egg, and cheese with tomato in half, I blow a fucking gasket in my head. Although I never say anything because I don't want to be one of those people. But dude, I'm not a Burmese python. How the fuck am I supposed to get my mouth around this? This is less of a problem with square breads, but I still find it more efficient to cut them in half diagonally. Now, take this guide and go forward, letting your only limit be your imagination as you prepare a snack or decide to raid the fridge at 2 a.m. When you're at the touch screen ordering a custom sandwich at Wawa and they ask you all those questions, take them seriously. My dad always told me, measure twice, cut once. Make any kind of sandwich you want. Your sandwich. But if you're going to do it right. December 31st, 2018. Renee and I sit at the bar of our favorite local spot. Bartender is pouring my second double jack splash of Coke on the rocks about 10 seconds after he puts the first one in front of me. Renee sips her wine as the conversation inevitably steers itself toward my misery. I begin bitching about the same stuff I've been bitching about over and over for years now. Vince, creative, WWE, and everything about them, and everything about the way they do everything. I'd grown to hate WWE. I tried not to for a long time. I tried to stay humble, grateful to God and the universe. After all, I was living my dream, right? It's only with the clarity of looking back on it now that I realize how truly depressed and miserable I was, and how long it had been that way. Things had finally reached a tipping point. Actually, tipping point is an understatement. That pitcher had tipped over, fell off the fucking counter, and shattered on the floor. The last couple months since I turned heel, a change I once hoped would be my salvation had been the lowest, most disappointing, infuriating, frustrating, agonizing period of my career. Vince was very hands-on with my new heel persona, whatever the fuck that was supposed to be. Writing scripts I was to follow verbatim. They all sucked. He even went so far as to script my matches. They all sucked. He'd begun to infiltrate the house shows now too, sending detailed formats to the stressed-out producers 30 minutes before bell time and demanding I cut cheesy heel promos to the audience as I walked to the ring. House shows are typically free of Vince and the TV writers. They're more laid back, and they had been my sanctuary for years. Vince started interfering and putting his fingerprints on these shows after he came to the traditional post-Christmas Madison Square Garden event, sat by the curtain, watched the whole show, and shit on the whole thing. Seth and I tore the house down in a steel cage match that night at MSG, but for some reason, Vince made us change the entire match on the rest of the loop to fit his vision, which was a less exciting, far shittier version of a steel cage match. I had nothing even close to heat. I was once one of the most popular performers in all of WWE, and now I was lost in the ring in front of confused or apathetic audiences. I was fucking dead in the water. Irreconcilable. A dog to be taken out back and shot, and I knew it. I was fully aware of it through every slow and excruciating second, yet my objections went ignored or refuted, like that movie where the guy is still awake but paralyzed during open-heart surgery. If you sat through any of my segments on TV during this time frame, you know what I'm talking about, unless you blocked it from your memory. If you thought you were confused, imagine what it was like being me. Shit, at least you had a remote control. I couldn't just turn the channel in my own life. I was in a living hell. Gee, it's fun reminiscing. I wasn't just depressed. I was angry. It's not like I don't like money. I don't want things to be this way. Why do they have to make it impossible? Why does everything have to be so fucking stupid? They're really gonna make me walk away from all this money, aren't they? They can't just write one good angle, let me cut one good fucking promo. Fuck! I can't believe it's come to this. There was a time I thought I'd be a lifer with WWE, but this whole fucking place has gone mad. And I feel like I'm the only one who can see it. A bunch of motherfuckers just playing violins while the ship sinks and Vince continues to lose his mind. Fuck them. I'm just gonna go to Japan or something, I tell Renee while sipping on my third stiff drink. I'm telling you, April 30th, I'm fucking done. I'd been talking about leaving for months, and my mind was long made up, but when I was in a bad mood or 3 drinks in, I would feel the need to reaffirm it for some reason, as if I suspected she didn't believe me. 6 months, I'm gone. 5 months, I'm out of here, I'm telling you. On it went. Renee had always been supportive and patient with my ramblings, but in this case, she finally had had enough of me bringing down the mood on New Year's Eve. Good, go then. Go to Japan. You should. Do whatever you want to do. Well, I'm gonna. Good, go. I'm gonna. Great. Well, good then. The next morning, we decided to ring in the new year with a hike. 2018 had largely sucked for me, even before the recent dumpster fire segments I was starring in on television. I had spent the majority of the year recovering from a December tricep surgery. In fact, I woke up New Year's Day 2018 covered in blood and gooey pus. It was the first sign of what I'd find out was a staph infection in my elbow that would require a second surgery. We were going to start off 2019 right, with fresh air and a beautiful hike. The toughest hike in Red Rock Canyon, Turtlehead Peak. I'd done Turtlehead a couple times solo, but this would be Renee's first trek up there. It takes a few hours round trip, and it's a bit of a bitch, but totally worth it at the top. We began trudging out into the desert brush, slowly gaining elevation. The sun was bright and the weather was great, peace and quiet. As your heart rate increases and a little sweat forms on your brow, endorphins begin to flow. The repetitive sound of your steps amidst the silence of the canyon brings focus. Stress melts away. The cloudiness in your mind clears up like the sky above you. It began to hit me as we started climbing uphill at a steeper grade. Oh, this is real. I'm leaving. And it's only 5 months away. I'll be free. Free as a fucking bird. I began to say things to Renee like, it'll be cool. Because I'll just make my own schedule. If we want to take a vacation, I just won't book myself on a show that week. What an attractive idea. Simple things like, I can design my own t-shirts. The notion that I'll be in control, able to call my own shots, do what I want to do, and be who I want to be, filled my heart with hope and my veins with adrenaline. We got to the top and spent 10 or 15 minutes enjoying the view, satisfied with our New Year's Day accomplishment. Renee took her obligatory Instagram photo and we headed down. By the time we were halfway back to the truck, I was bursting with optimism. It had become real for me. I wasn't mad that I was leaving WWE anymore. I was just excited for the future. I felt the way a kid feels on the morning of the last day of school. Freedom and adventure in my sights. I'm almost there. It was a subtle yet dramatic change in perspective for me. That day put me in the right frame of mind to survive the coming months in WWE and leave with my head held high. In a strange coincidence, unbeknownst to me, at this exact moment, an announcement was being made to the wrestling world. A new promotion had been formed, and it was called All Elite Wrestling. Flick pick, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, 1991. Schwarzenegger. I don't know why we needed more than 2 Terminators. What are we on now? 6, 7? When Nirvana did MTV Unplugged, they finished the set with Leadbelly's Where Did You Sleep Last Night? The producers wanted them to go out for an encore. Kurt Cobain refused because that performance was so good, there was no way they could top what they had just done. You gotta know when to walk off stage. The Terminator with a thumbs up as he's being lowered into the molten lava steel pit? That's it. That's the end of the story. Anytime you add time travel into the mix, things get confusing, and the first 2 Terminators are no exception. But you had it! The story was perfectly wrapped up in a little bow. Humanity saved, all the computer chips destroyed, and you had to go in and rip the wound open and basically shit on everything we went through to stop Judgment Day by saying it was inevitable? The only inevitability is that Hollywood studios will squeeze every bit of juice they can out of a bankable franchise, even if it's at the expense of a perfect story. T2, in my opinion, is a rare case where the sequel is better than the original. T2 had cutting-edge special effects for the time, specifically for the T-1000 liquid metal Terminator that scared the bejesus out of me as a kid. But this film doesn't rely on CGI like you see today. Back in the 90s, they really blew shit up. They drove a real bus over the gap in the freeway in speed. My mom loved T2. She always did push-ups and crunches at night before she went to work. I think she wanted to be like Linda Hamilton, doing pull-ups in the psych ward. The crazy thing about this being one of my favorite movies of all time is that I actually got to reenact the iconic scene where Arnold walks into a bar naked and demands your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle from a rugged-looking patron while Dwight Yoakam plays on the jukebox. The guy replies, "You forgot to say please," before putting out a cigar on Arnold's giant pec. The WWE 2K16 video game had some kind of Terminator tie-in, and they got actual Arnold Schwarzenegger to be in the commercial. The 2K people asked me if I was familiar with Terminator 2. Hell yeah, I said, it's one of my favorite movies. And I told them I was quite familiar with the biker bar scene. I flew to LA on an off day on very little sleep, so when I found out exactly what we were doing and Arnold himself showed up with a bevy of security, including a couple of badass-looking Dobermans, I thought I had accidentally eaten a pot cookie. I stood in an exact replica of the scene from T2 with the real-life Terminator standing in front of me. It was a trip. It's one of those unexpected cool experiences that are the bonuses of the job. Just one of those things that pops up sometimes. Remember that one time you recreated a scene from Terminator 2 with Arnold? Oh yeah. Weird. You know, I thought he'd be taller. Cincinnati. As you may have learned from many ring announcers over the years, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and it will always be home. Like Superman gets his powers from the sun, I'm always energized by coming back to where I was born and raised. I'd been trying hard to get an AEW Dynamite at the arena in Cincinnati where I worked event staff as a teenager. At the time, it was called First Star Center. Then it changed to US Bank Arena. As I write this, it's called Heritage Bank Arena. I spent many nights standing in the VOMs watching the Cincinnati Cyclones play in front of 800 people, manning the smoking doors for $6 an hour. We also got to do security at Riverbend Music Center, tackling people with lawn seats who tried to sneak into the pavilion. We worked concerts at Bogart's, breaking up fights. Even though I was underage, I got to do some security gigs at that nightclub on Pete Rose Way that had a million different names over the years, where I did ecstasy for the first time. At the arena, I'd look around and imagine it full of screaming wrestling fans as I entered the ring. When I showed up for work and clocked in at the loading dock entrance, I'd imagine I was walking into the arena to wrestle in the main event that night. I'd walk down the halls with swagger. I could picture it. Some years later, I'd walk through the same door to wrestle in the main event that night, as planned. That arena did not want to host AEW, as it turned out. They said they only do business with WWE. Well, Heritage Bank Center, you fucked up. We had a different venue in Cincinnati locked up for the fall, but then, like so many other things, the pandemic hit. I look forward to performing at home again. Cincinnati is kind of a little big city. We have two major sports teams, arts, theater, museums. The Natural History Museum has a giant dope T-Rex skeleton. But if I had to sell you on visiting the Natty, it would be for the chili. Cincinnati-style chili, that is. Known to the locals simply as Skyline or Gold Star, the two rivals in the chili game. Most of us could tell the difference between Skyline and Gold Star in a blind taste test 10 out of 10 times, but they aren't very dissimilar. Served over spaghetti or on a hot dog with cheese, there's either a Gold Star or a Skyline on just about every corner in the greater Cincinnati area, and growing up, it becomes a large part of your diet. One time I was on the main event of SmackDown in Cincinnati, and I asked a favor of Bruno, WWE backstage legend, and a guy who you can count on for anything. I would call him if I woke up next to a dead hooker. I asked if he would pick me up 2 cheese conies from the Skyline on the concourse level. No onion. He brought me the steamy, hot, gooey, cheesy goods as I was making my way to Gorilla. They'd be there when I got back, but they were hot now. The cheese was fluffy. The smell was tantalizing. I dropped them off back in the locker room, intent to head to the ring and enjoy the glory of Skyline afterward. But the steam transformed into long cartoon fingers, followed me down the hall, enveloped my body and traveled up my nose. My feet floated off the ground as I was pulled back toward the source, arms dangling my sides, my eyes glazed over, drool dripping from my mouth. Who knew when I'd be back in town? This was my chance. I scarfed those suckers a few minutes before I went to the ring, burping all the way, fighting through heartburn on the way to victory. Totally worth it. What's a typical Cincinnatian like? Hard to say. Like any city, there are some nice parts, some not so nice parts, hip urban neighborhoods that aren't far from the Ohio River. Just several miles south of that and you're in Kentucky. And you're really in Kentucky. You might live in a mansion overlooking the river. You might live in a trailer park. You might have gone to a rich Catholic high school on the west side, or you might have gone to a public shithole. You might be country, you might be city, you might be something in between, an urban redneck. Cincinnati is a beautiful Midwestern menagerie of people, places, and things. Blue collar, small town, big city, chili that makes no sense to anyone else but us, hard to pin down. I couldn't have come from anywhere else. Where do I fit in exactly? A place where it seemed all the economy class passengers in life were gathered, where all the have-nots and ne'er-do-wells washed up together on the east side of town in a gutter where they would be given low-income housing but be largely ignored. A place you chose to live but didn't really have a choice. At this time, on this side of town for a certain socioeconomic class, Picadilly was an inevitability. Picadilly was several dozen 6-unit apartment buildings owned and operated by dozens of different landlords. A sprawling ghetto paradise tucked away off State Route 125, just out of sight from the main drag, Beachmont Avenue, lined with shopping, restaurants, and the Beachmont Racket Club. Beyond the tree line in the distance, you might be able to make out a rooftop, a sign of the ugly secret hiding in plain sight. Most would never know this kingdom was here, unless you were an explorer searching for lost Section 8 cities. Turn down Hamblin Drive past some quaint houses and a right turn onto Piccadilly Circle. The splendor will soon come into full view as you look out across a valley of endless apartment buildings. Most tan brown, some blue or gray. One particular eyesore is red. Many windows are broken. You'll see parking lots of gravel, cracked pavement, or dirt. Avoiding the potholes as you drive down the hill, you'll twist and turn through Piccadilly. Budweiser cans and cigarette butts litter the roadside, and stray animals scavenge the dumpsters. You'll drive across the creek that winds through our little paradise, over a giant storm drain dammed up by shopping carts, as residents often walk across 125 to Kroger and bring the whole shopping cart back with them, discarding it in the creek or simply leaving it strewn about. Many vehicles look like they haven't been driven in years, rusted out, spray-painted. You'll likely see a police car or two outside a building and a shirtless guy with bad tattoos, beer in hand, pleading his case to the officers regarding some routine disturbance. There's a barefoot woman with frosty blue eyeshadow screaming expletives at him, waving a cigarette in her unflattering cut-off jean shorts. All kinds of folks ended up in Piccadilly for one reason or another, but the common denominator was that it was cheap, and there were always apartments available. For many, Piccadilly was temporary, a place for transients, a place you came when your home was foreclosed on, when you lost your job, got out of jail, or left your shitty husband and took the kids, a place to be until you found something better. For others, it was simply the only place you could afford to live. We moved to Piccadilly when I was 6, to a second-floor apartment, Apartment C in Building 102. Directly underneath us in Apartment A lived a couple of kids about my age named Donnie and Kevin. We spent most of our free time together, throwing rocks, riding bikes with our shirts tucked in the back of our shorts like real renegades, and skulking around the creek. We played baseball with tennis balls because we had access to a surplus of tennis balls. That is to say, the Beachmont Racket Club had tennis balls. We'd sneak onto the courts behind the tarp, steal them right out of the machine, filling up our backpacks. I'd always remember this dude in bright white shoes, a polo shirt, and khaki shorts chasing us through the parking lot while we sped away on our bikes laughing. Piccadilly had a lot of kids. Every day there would be a knock on your door. 1 to 3 kids with scabbed elbows and knees on the other side when you answered. You want to play baseball? You want to ride bikes? You want to play football? We were the dumb kind of kids that played tackle football on concrete. You want to wrestle? Oh yeah, we played wrestling. Many of my contemporaries in the business have great memories of backyard wrestling as kids. In fact, that's where a lot of them first practiced the athletic maneuvers they perform today. They have home video footage of themselves in homemade costumes, playing flashy characters created in their imaginations, performing leg drops and flying elbows on their friends, all in great fun. Heartwarming stuff. I can't say I was ever a backyard wrestler, mostly because I didn't have a backyard. But we played wrestling. Even though we may have suspected wrestling was a work, a show, it didn't occur to us that we could work together, like the wrestlers on TV were really doing. We could have had fun mimicking the moves and engaging in morality plays for our entertainment. Instead, we just beat the shit out of each other. You want to wrestle? Would go like this. We'd all meet out front of an apartment building on the dirt, amidst sparse patches of grass, and we'd choose a wrestler to be. I'm Brett. I'm Razor. I'm Undertaker. We would assign a referee to count someone's shoulders to the ground for a pinfall. One kid would hide behind a bush and enter the imaginary gladiatorial arena. Another would enter from behind the dumpster, not bothering with an attempt to portray any of his designated wrestler's trademark mannerisms or put on any sort of performance. The ref would ring the bell, knocking 3 times on the green thing, a square metal box we'd often sit on that I assume had something to do with the building's electricity. I really don't know what it did. We would then proceed to just fight, throwing punches, pulling hair, biting, kicking shins, whatever juvenile offense we can muster up in an attempt to maneuver our opponent into a pinning position. Often a head would be cradled, a leg hooked, and a 3-count slapped on the cracked dirt to great protest. "There wasn't 3!" the kid might scream, tears in his eyes. Wrestling was my favorite activity of ours, not just because wrestling was my favorite thing to watch. I was good at it, far better at it than any other sport we played. I mostly always won. I had a secret weapon, too. A move I taught myself watching John Earthquake Tenta in the first wrestling tape I ever owned, SummerSlam 90. 25 years before I'd faced Chris Jericho in his vaunted Walls of Jericho, I was Picadilly's master of the Boston Crab. I wouldn't turn it over in the traditional way. I devised something more practical for my situation. I would get a kid face down, slam my knee into his lower back several times if need be, and maneuver into the Boston Crab position, pulling his legs up toward the back of his head until he screamed for mercy, signaling defeat by verbalizing, "I give." Tapping out wasn't a thing yet. Donnie and Kevin introduced me to wrestling. I knew Ninja Turtles, but when we compared action figures, they had all these guys I didn't know. Some of them it would turn out with the likes of Demolition, Bret Hart, Ultimate Warrior, Jake the Snake. They had wrestling tapes. Survivor Series and Royal Rumble, both recorded on a 6-hour VHS. All of these action figures came to life on the screen. This wasn't a cartoon. It was a real-life sport, like the Reds. But this was better than baseball. They would explain to me who was who in wrestling. We'd play with the figures and watch the tapes. They had some different figures, too. Guys I was told were Ric Flair and Sting, who had the Warrior paint but also a flat top with a badass rat tail, a hairstyle which Donnie and Kevin both adopted. Brian Pillman, I was told, and as evidenced by his tiger-striped trunks, also played for the Bengals, which he had years earlier. This was WCW. "You don't know WCW?" Kevin asked. I wasn't in the know, not cool enough yet. I needed to see these guys come to life on screen too. "This is real wrestling though," said Donnie. He was showing me a copy of I Like to Hurt People, which was a cult classic tape from the 80s featuring Dusty, Sans Polka Dots, and Terry Funk. It claimed to be disgustingly real. There was so much to learn. These are my first memories of wrestling. My first memories of much of anything, for that matter. Some kids in Picadilly were darker than others. Sure, there might be some nice kids with nice parents who wanted to play sports and run around, but there seemed to be an inordinate number of kids who were for sure troubled. This one kid who moved in across from Donnie and Kevin is a prime example. We were all hanging out on his back porch when he pulled out a lizard of some sort, a small gecko or newt or something that he must have pulled from the creek. He took out a syringe filled with water. Don't ask me where a 9-year-old got a syringe, and stuck it into the poor little reptile. He pushed the plunger and pumped it full of water like a balloon. Its arms got all stubby and its eyes bugged out of its head until it burst. I don't know where that kid is, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's got dead bodies in his basement. Early childhood in Picadilly was fun. You'd be out all day running around, then play hide and seek at night, darting in and out from behind cars until everyone's parents made them go inside. Then you'd start again the next morning. These were innocent times. But as we got a little older, the overarching depression of Picadilly and its residents' place in the world wouldn't be lost on us, nor the weight of the crushing realities of life that kept people from getting out. Food stamps, welfare checks, robberies, evictions, alcoholism, drug arrests, and domestic violence painted the picture of what life had in store for us, even if we didn't fully understand these things. For a kid who's never known anything different, you might not know to think of yourself or where you live as anything less than. But our reputation amongst teachers, administrators, and classmates made it clear that to them, to everyone, we were Picadilly kids. We were a burden, a drain on time and resources, irredeemable miscreants. We were an obligation placed on the school until we were old enough to go to jail. The beginnings of alienation. To other kids, we were a curiosity of which to make fun. Nah, you live in Picadilly. Yeah, so what? I never understood when kids would ridicule your clothes. I wore sweatpants to school. Those were the pants I had. You look like a hobo, some little shit with a bowl cut might say. Shut up, Dylan, he's poor, a little girl says, making me feel worse. It's like, okay, your parents bought you that starter jacket, dude. You don't have a job. You're 9. Fuck both y'all. I felt a neon sign flashing over my head at all times. An asterisk next to my name every time a teacher spoke to me like a charity case. Y'all don't know me. You've never been to my house. Who cares where I live anyway? I'm just living. I didn't do anything to anybody. I didn't get it. I turned inward. Picadilly kids became a badge we wore with pride. They don't need us, we don't need them. Our home base became our sanctuary. We would raise ourselves on our own territory. While parents were at work, at the bar, or self-medicating while watching daytime TV, Picadilly became a wild ecosystem. A Lord of the Flies experiment, a motley assortment of latchkey kids, feral products of broken condoms that roamed the streets marking their territory. The fights. Jesus Christ, the fights. Everybody in Picadilly fought everybody all the time. It was exhausting. I was never the type to start fights or look for trouble. It's not my nature. I don't like that negativity, but it was inescapable. My first taste of this harsh new world came one day while riding my bike. 3 kids, a couple years older than me, maybe 11 or 12, flagged me down on the side of the street. Naively, I pulled over to chat with them. They complimented my bike. They were being nice. As I talked with them, I sensed they were being a little too nice. I noticed the glances between them, and my instincts knew. They were toying with me. Hey, didn't you say he wanted to fight us? One kid says. Yeah, he does. Nah, I didn't say nothing. I don't know you, I said, as I tried to get my wheels out of the grass and back on the pavement. The third kid blocked my way. I tried to keep my cool, but I knew this was a bad deal. I could feel it. You have to fight us, the kid said, smirking. Before I knew it, my ass was flying up in the air. They had grabbed underneath the seat of my bike and flipped it over. I could feel the wheels spinning underneath. I was out of control and I hit the ground hard. Then it came. A hard soccer kick in the ribs that knocked the wind out of me completely. I couldn't take a breath. It felt like I'd been stabbed. The 3 of them proceeded to beat the fuck out of me for no reason at all. They kicked me repeatedly as I squirmed around, gasping for air. It was something of an out-of-body experience. I just kept trying to pull air into my lungs. They celebrated, quite proud of themselves, slapping hands and laughing as they jogged away. Why did they do this? Were these kids mentally damaged sadists? Most likely, but at best, they were garden variety bullies. I hate bullies. As I pulled myself up, I realized I couldn't breathe through my nose, so I started sucking in air through my mouth in bursts as I fought back tears. I gathered myself quickly and rode home as fast as I could in such a state. I went straight to the room I shared with my sister and broke down, punching the walls in frustration, crying. What just happened? Why? It made no sense. I didn't do anything to anybody. Nothing was gained. Later, I would look in the mirror and see a grotesque scrape on the side of my face, as well as what would be the first of somewhere in the ballpark of 1,000,000 black eyes over the next couple decades. It was kind of cool. I looked like one of the wrestlers from the black and white pages in the back of the magazines. The guys with the blood. I grabbed my cardboard championship belt and put it over my shoulder, unknowingly gazing into the mirror at my future. Spin It Up, Green Day, Insomniac, 1995. This is one of the first CDs I ever had and still my favorite Green Day album. Hard-charging riffs from beginning to end, every song bleeds seamlessly into the next. The standout here is the classic track, Brain Stew, which I appreciated on another level in later years. Any former or current, methamphetamine user will appreciate how this song so eloquently and accurately depicts what it's like to have insomnia and be fucked up and spun out in one's room. Bail. If I had any illusions that the random beatdown was an isolated incident, they didn't last long. I'd soon learn the final lesson that would shape my view of people, of Picadilly, of the world around me. My bike was my most prized possession. My Huffy Dirt Dog, with the badass green and black color scheme, bought for me by my mom. My wheels! One night I left it unattended, proudly on its kickstand out in front of the apartment before going in for the evening. I came out the next morning and it was gone. Just gone. Stolen. How could somebody do that, I wondered? Just take something that's not yours? What kind of shitty person would do such a thing? I was angry, furious, mad at whoever stole from me and mad at myself for being so stupid. I just left my bike out there unlocked. What did I expect to happen? Why did I assume people were nice? It was obvious now. Everybody sucked. The world was full of nothing but shitty people who steal your bike, jump you, and mock you. Fuck everyone. I'd never be taken advantage of again. I'm no fool. I won't make the same mistakes. I'd be on the lookout, hoodie up, head down. I'd power walk the neighborhood with a sneer, deftly avoiding the traps and obstacles set by those who sought to take from me. If they got too close, I'd snap at them like a copperhead snake. I'll get you before you get me. I became intensely antisocial at times, and mean. I didn't like to be fucked with. At school, I put forth every signal that I was to be left the hell alone. I did my work. Sometimes I even listened, if the subject was interesting. I liked history, still do. I like watching documentaries on the Battle of Midway or Lewis and Clark, stuff like that. But I rarely spoke, interacted, or participated. Everyone was an enemy. At home in Picadilly, we ran in packs. Strength in numbers. You wouldn't want to be a straggler. You may come across a rival pack that would surely mess with you. Hey kid, come here, we want to talk to you. We knew what that meant. When two packs crossed paths, we'd bristle and bark like hyenas. It might devolve into the two sides throwing rocks at each other. A kid getting pelted badly in the face and everyone scattering. Representatives of similar age or size might be chosen from each group to fight each other. I was often a target when I was younger. They'd try to pick me off. At first, I was scared to fight, wishing these other kids would just go away. But there was no other choice. People would never just leave me alone. I'd learned that by now. I remember me and another kid circling, surrounded by kids cheering us on, throwing ridiculous Jean-Claude Van Damme strikes and ninja kicks at the air because we didn't know how to fight. I wrangled him down to all fours by the shirt collar and kicked him flush in the mouth, hard. He got up and ran away, turned back to scream some threats, blood running down his chin, then turned to run again. Holy shit! I won! My friends celebrated with me as we walked down the street, reliving the play-by-play. All of this fighting, all of this negativity, as exhausting as it was inescapable. I figured I might as well lean into it. After all, this was a much better feeling than being on the opposite end of a Payless sneaker to the face. There was a kid who we'll call Scott Baio, just because he kind of looked like him. A couple years older than me, a real cocky 8th grader. Pretty jacked for a middle schooler, even had abs and shit. He'd sit there on his BMX shirtless while the girls hung all over him. One of those kids who people talked about like he was to be feared. I didn't care for him. He was loud, made fun of people. Scott played football with us one evening. Pretty good-sized game, maybe 6-on-6 on a good grassy area by the first of Piccadilly's 2 bus stops. It was a central hangout spot, good to play football or for groups to stand around in a circle, get high, and play hacky sack. Girls would hang out, sitting on the air conditioners, smoking cigarettes and drawing in their notebooks. Scott was bigger and stronger than most any other player. He'd run back kickoffs every time, hugging the ball and charging in a straight line, running as hard as possible. Nobody could tackle him. Kids bounced right off of him, physically outmatched. He took great amusement in this. Being an 8th grader playing with younger kids, it was like he had a cheat code. Real hot shit. As fate would have it, we were on opposite teams. Scott intercepted a pass and looked to run it back for a touchdown. I cut across the field at an angle in hot pursuit. Now directly behind Baio, I'd lunged and grabbed a hold of the very nice basketball jersey he was wearing, yanking and pulling hard, dragging him to the ground in a dusty tornado of limbs, audibly ripping polyester as we crossed into the end zone. There it was again. A now familiar feeling, the now fucking standard, I guess. Picadilly sucker kick in the ribs. Oxygen sucked out of my lungs in an instant. Prone on all fours after the tackle. A loud crack as Bayo's foot slammed into my gut. Still couldn't breathe. Let me check to make sure there isn't a knife in my sternum. Scott Baio was incensed now. His precious fancy NBA jersey ripped to shreds, hanging off his neck like a cape. Stupid, you ripped my fucking jersey, you little fucking punk. You owe me $50, motherfucker. Now, I obviously felt that all I did was tackle him, and it's his own fault for wearing his precious fucking jersey, and I did my best to communicate this while struggling to breathe. Baio was apoplectic, screaming for all to hear. He ripped my jersey! As I struggled to my feet. You better have my money or I'm gonna beat your ass, he proclaimed as he rode away in a hurry on his emergency room. Later that night, my mom answered a knock at our door. I soon realized who she was talking to in the hall when I heard her blankly stating, "You're not getting any money." I moved closer to the door and saw fucking Baio standing in the hallway. He found out where I lived and was trying to fucking gouge my mother for cash. Ma'am, I just need you to realize somebody owes me $50. The gall! My blood boiled. My mom had zero patience for this fucker. He's lucky she didn't brain him with a baseball bat we kept by the door. The next morning on the school bus, I passed Dickhead as I walked down the aisle. You better have my $50 or we're gonna have to fight. You don't want to fight me. I remained cold. As he got off the bus, he reminded me, you better have my money or you're gonna get your ass beat. Now, under normal circumstances, I wouldn't particularly want to fight this dude. He was 2 years older than me, bigger, stronger. But I had a strong sense of justification on my side. The fight had already begun, and he threw the first shot by kicking me while I was down, unprovoked. And I'm not counting his jersey ripping as provocation. He was just being a little bitch about it. He'd been talking shit for everyone to hear, and on top of that, he came to my door and talked to my mom? The fuck was that? Was that a PTA meeting? I'd been completely and totally disrespected. I had no choice but to fight him. The buzz on the school bus home was electric. John's gonna fight Scott. Dude, you're gonna get your ass beat. All the chatter from the pundits around me put butterflies in my stomach. I stood up in the aisle as we turned onto Picadilly Circle. Too much nervous energy to sit still. Soon we'd be at the first bus stop where Scott got off. I assumed this is where it would go down. I normally got off on the second stop, but if I didn't get off here, it would give him the opportunity to stay on the bus. Then it would be like I didn't want to fight and he was following me to my stop, chasing me down, like I was trying to get away. I thought that would give him a psychological edge and more opportunity to talk shit for his friend's entertainment, like, where do you think you're going? You trying to run home, you pussy? Or something to that effect. Nah, I'll get off here. Donnie held onto my backpack for me as I got up and walked the aisle, my heart pounding. Kids filed out seat by seat. Scott sat near the front and was off the bus already. As I neared the front, I looked through the door to see he was standing maybe 15 yards away with his friends and some girls in a circle by the air conditioners, his back to the bus and me. There was laughing, smiling, the joy of the first moments of freedom after a day in school. When I came off the stairs and my feet hit the pavement, I casually walked a few feet observing them. I realized he had no idea I planned to fight him. Even though he's the one who told me I better pay him $50 or get my ass beat, he was oblivious. I guess he just thought he could run his mouth all day trying to look tough in front of his friends and impress girls, but he wouldn't actually have to follow through on anything. Or he just planned to beat my ass on his own schedule. Either way, fuck this guy. You asked for it. You got me all worked up for it. You might be 2 years older than me, but I got the jump on you. I'll get you before you get me. I charged straight at him and body checked that bitch hard into the air conditioners. The girls standing nearby jumped and screamed. His friends were completely caught off guard. What the fuck, dude? The rusted metal of the air conditioners cut him up badly. His arm was covered in bright red blood from the forearm down. His backpack was still on, and I tried to sling him by it, which actually almost brought him to his feet, but then he fell straight on his back and rolled to his side. I took the one loose strap with my left hand and tried to choke him with it, pelting him in the eye over and over with my right hand. Baio was in shock. It all happened too fast for him. His friends yelled encouragement. Eventually, his surprise turned to anger and he tried to fight back, powering me off him briefly. But I jumped back on top of him. At this point, one of his friends shoved me off of Bayo, which prompted Donnie and Kevin to start throwing wild haymakers, and for a brief moment, complete chaos erupted around me as I kept wrestling the asshole who started all this in the first place to the ground. Then, not unlike a cattle rancher in the movies who stops a stampeding herd in its tracks by firing her pistol in the air, the bus driver arrived. She had stopped the bus 50 yards up the street and came running back to break up the fracas. This bus driver took no shit. She was screaming, hollering, and slapping kids on the head, threatening to call the cops, the principal, the National Guard, and everyone else. She said she'd have us all suspended, that the bus stop was school grounds. One kid comically tried to argue we weren't on school property, but by then it was over. Fuck yous were already being exchanged between the retreating parties as the bus driver explained with great animation to the onlookers who had gathered, steam coming out of her ears, what all the commotion was and how she was sick of this goddamn shit. Cops would be here next if the situation didn't dissipate immediately, and that meant angry parents. Both sides knew that. Time to get the hell out of here. We ran like the wind to Donnie and Kevin's apartment on a high, like we won the World Series. Their dad was drinking a Budweiser, grilling burgers on the porch. We told him the story and he gave me a cheers. I took a long swig of my citrus drop soda. I'd never been so thirsty. That's what I'm talking about, he said, a little buzzed, smiling broadly. That kid's a fucking punk. Flick pick, Crimson Tide, 1995. Denzel Washington, Gene Hackman. I'm the commander of this fucking ship! This movie rules. All due respect to The Hunt for Red October, but I think Crimson Tide is better. Hackman plays an old, embattled naval commander aboard the USS Alabama, a nuclear submarine, during a fictional overseas conflict with Russian rebels. I squirm in my seat to this day watching this movie. As Cold War-like tension runs high, nuclear trigger fingers are getting itchy, particularly Hackman's, as a partial message comes in from the US, seemingly ordering a missile launch. Denzel, the SO, second in command, wants to wait until the radio gets back online and they can retrieve the full message before taking action and starting a war. Hackman believes they have to strike now. The crew is split. It's an unthinkable position to be in, and mutiny erupts on board. Hackman and Denzel are so good and believable as diametrically opposed naval commanders. I wish Denzel's character in this movie was a real person who was running for president, because I would vote for him. This film also has an epic and iconic soundtrack by Hans Zimmer. The track Roll Tide is a great pump-up tune to throw into your workout mix as a change of pace. As part of WWE's tribute to the troops one year, I actually got to go aboard a nuclear sub. The biggest one in the US Navy, actually. Those tribute to the troops events were always a privilege, a chance to give back a little something to our brave men and women in the service and experience some amazing things. One year, Renee and I got to fly in a military helicopter over some of the most restricted airspace in the world, right over the White House and the Pentagon. This particular year, I and a few others got a tour of the submarine, which, if it were its own sovereign nation, would be the third most powerful nation on Earth in terms of firepower, behind only Russia and the US. That's power of God type shit. I have incredible respect for the sailors on these submarines. They go down for months at a time. No sunlight, no fresh air, and let me tell you, it's cramped. As someone who gets claustrophobic in hotel rooms, I can't imagine what it's like to serve on a submarine. And this was the biggest in the Navy. We were told other attack submarines are much smaller. Damn, I'm on the biggest sub in the Navy and I already feel like Buddy the Elf. They bunked 6 to a room in quarters as big as my wife's closet. Our tour guide explained their job was basically to be the world's bouncer. They go out to sea and just hang out. If there's no trouble, they just chill. They know what their job is, but they hope and pray, as we all do, that they will never have to do it and that their presence alone will be enough to deter conflict. It was a humbling experience I'll never forget. Watch Crimson Tide and say thank you to all our brave sailors out there ducking their heads as they move through the halls of their ships, sleeping on their little bunks away from their family for months at a time, proudly serving their country and keeping us all safe. I salute you all. Joke Claudio told me. We didn't like our trip to Pennsylvania Dutch country. It just felt like something was amiss. HWA Chunk, late 2003. Bang! 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 It sounded like gunshots, I thought. I parked my truck, got out and looked.
All right. That's all we have for the first part of book by Jon Moxley. All right, that's the end of part one. That's the end of part one with the book. So you guys, thank you all for coming out. This was part one. Jon Moxley book, MOX by Jon Moxley. Listen to the great audiobook of MOX right now. But we'll have part two later on. Get ready for the wildest ride. Listen to this audiobook by Jon Moxley and what I learned from listening to Jon Moxley book. But thank you all for coming out, guys. Soon to Reveals Public. You guys click the links below. You guys already know what it is. This point is OUT.
Like I say this a lot. We're not a sport. We're a movie about a sport, or a TV show about a sport, right? So the interest of all the other.
I feel like the heel turn did wonders for me. There was a sense of reality in that, to where I had hit a point. And the babyface stuff was going great. The Alpha Academy stuff was going great. We had a blast with that. But I'm a realist, and I'm also like a long-term thinker.